Hello and welcome to On The Esky, a sports podcast that is still in lockdown. We're going to continue our lockdown series, at least for probably the next month, as we deal with the dreaded Coco. As always, though, I've got the two boys back with me, Peps and Monks. We're going to talk about all the major sports news that's been happening. Of course, there's been cricket news, big cricket news, especially in India versus England. Then we're going to have a look at the NRL finals continuing and have a quick look at the AFL finals as it goes into the grand final next week. Big first round of the NFL's in the books, and we'll preview week 2. The EPL's kicked off. Ronaldo's already back, and United look like they've got their mojo. And we'll finish off the final round with some boxing, UFC news, some F1, and, of course, tennis. I think that'll probably get us underway. As always, though, if you don't like the sports we're talking about, there is timestamps. Jump into those. We can skip ahead, but also give us a subscribe, give us a like, and check us out on the Instagram as well. With that, Peppy, do you want to kick us off with a shout of beer?
Yeah, mate, I would love to shout Sheriff Tiraspol, a beer here. Big name club. I'm sure everyone's familiar with them. They're actually from Moldova, the footballing powerhouse that is Moldova. It's the first ever Moldovan side to play in the Champions League. And guess what? They're 1 win, 0 draws, 0 losses. They're 100%. They had a win at home against Shakhtar Donetsk, and normally pretty good Ukrainian side. It did cost me a multi, but I'm not going to hold that too much against them. So currently in Group D in the Champions League, there's some little clubs. I don't know if you've heard of them. Real Madrid and Internazionale. Yeah, very small clubs. And the powerhouse Sheriff is on. So I'm shouting them a beer. The Moldovans. Look, I hate the stereotype, but I'm sure the Eastern European don't mind getting around a little bit of the grog after a win. So shout out to you. Go Sheriffs.
Oh, definitely big time. It'll be interesting to see if they can get out of that group. Monks, who are you shouting a beer out to?
Yeah, look, I'm gonna keep it quick this week. I am going to shout Lando Norris a beer. Coming second in the F1 last weekend, which we'll cover later on. I would shout Danny Rick a beer, but he's probably had a few too many already. So I'm going to shout Lando Norris a beer he probably needs to wash the taste out of his mouth. Don't know if that's sacrilege saying that as an Aussie, but he had his first experience of a shoey. Drank some champagne out of Danny Rick's shoe up on the podium there. So I'm going to shout Lando Norris a beer this week to wash that experience out.
Yes, definitely. An absolute scenes for McLaren this week, and we'll talk more about that when we get into F1. So that leaves me with my shout of beer, and I want to shout a beer out to all those returning NFL stars that are coming back from injuries into week 1. The likes of like Von Miller, Saquon Barkley, CMC, all coming back, all contributing to their clubs. It's great to see some of the biggest names coming back from the, devastating injuries to end last season, and then performing to kick off the year. So it'd be really interesting to see how the rest of the season goes with these guys coming back, and the comeback player of the year awards are going to be hotly contested, I think, this year.
Definitely. Hopefully they all keep healthy.
Candidates, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. So with that, I think we go into the cricket, and I'm going to throw it to you in a minute, Peps, but we talked it up, and unfortunately we've been blue balls like any man in a marriage will know about.
Doesn't have to be just a marriage.
Run us through what happened with India versus England, Peppy.
Yeah, well, 2 hours before the scheduled start of play in the 5th test, and the match got abandoned, it seems at the moment, although we'll get into the exact nitty-gritty of that in just a sec, due to some COVID concerns. Apparently there was a Ravi Shastri book launch a few days beforehand, and a lot of the players had attended that. And it turns out a physio and another staff member picked up the dreaded Coco, those dirty physios, just going around, getting their mitts on everyone. And the Indians were a little bit concerned that this might have been getting transmitted amongst the team. and it went to the final hour, the ninth hour, and they pulled the pin. So a really disappointing finish to what was shaping up to be an excellent fifth test. Now the question remains: is it a forfeit for India, or is it a match abandoned? We're not quite sure. There's a lot of sort of things to do financially and with insurance that I don't quite understand right now. But essentially, it's the BCCI and the ECB arguing over who's at fault here. We don't quite have an answer just yet. So as it stands, it's an abandoned game with India winning the series 2-1. But that's not official yet with an ongoing investigation. And there is some talk that maybe they might even push this decider back to 2022. India is meant to be over there for a white ball series, and we'll sort it out from there. And I need to turn that that notification off just as we go through there. But yeah, very very unusual circumstances in this world that we live in.
Yeah, well, we just mentioned NFL before, and they've kind of got the rule that if your team gets the COVID and then causes a match to be missed, then you have forfeited. So in this case, you could say that India had forfeited, and then potentially it's a drawn series. It'd be interesting to see what happens here. And there was also the worry that you got your big Indian stars, and the IPL is going to kick off this weekend. And if they're going to come back and be a part of that, hey, you don't want them then spreading into the IPL, and the IPL gets missed out again. So I can see what big concerns from the BCCI, but we've got a packed schedule now for the rest of the year, essentially for India and England. You're not going to fit in any room there to fit in another test for these guys. So yeah, looking likely if they're going to complete this series, it'll be next year, or they'll make some decision, and yeah, we'll get some unfortunate, unsatisfying result.
Yeah, look, it's not that much of a stretch to be a conspiracy, is it? With the big money in the IPL and the Indian, cricket board just saying, well, look, we've got a close contact in a physio, as close a contact as you can get, I guess, and saying, we need to look after the players and the fact that the IPL is coming up. So whether or not that had something to do with it, who knows? But a really disappointing finish to what had been an excellent series.
Yep.
Anticlimactic, if you will.
Yes, definitely.
Very much so, yeah.
It does provide an excellent segue for us, though, because the IPL does resume on this weekend. So speaking of which,
Sunday comes back. It seems like forever, since we were talking about the Indian Premier League. I was just thinking, boys, maybe we just all need to go for the Delhi Capitals. We all picked teams before the series started, but the Delhi Capitals reached out, and we're lucky to talk to some people from them. But it seems like it's going to be that those top teams in RCB, Delhi Capitals going at it. Who can push them? Mumbai Indians always very strong. Outside of them, you probably don't see anyone winning it. But we also do talk about the depth of the Indian Premier League. On their night, any team can win.
I was interested to get your thoughts, Peps, because also I think it's been 5 months maybe since.
Since about early April, was it?
Yeah, early April, just into May.
That's it, right.
Yeah, that was put on hold. So we are restarting it. Of all the international players coming back?
No, not all the international players are coming back. A lot are, but not everyone. To be honest, I've been so enthralled, with the NFL starting and the footy finals over here in Australia, and having to do a little bit of physio study myself, that I haven't really got up to speed with all the ins and outs of who is coming back. But look, we've got games happening on Sunday, so we'll be able to check those squads and see who is returning. The bulk of the big name guys are going back, and let me tell you this: if you're on $2 million, you're probably more likely to go finish your contract than a guy that was on 100 grand.
So you're saying Steve Smith might not be going back?
I'm just speculating that possibly the number of zeros at the end of the contract is correlated with you returning to the competition. It's just speculation.
So my point was going to be, with the restart of the series and with potentially missing of core guys within teams, that it could be a whole new season. Like the teams that had been doing really well might just fall off. Well, like we said, India's depth for players in cricket, they can definitely find good quality to fill in for those guys that potentially could miss. So you'd think with the teams they've got, maybe the status quo stays the same. Maybe it changes up a little bit. It'd be interesting to see. That's why we're interested to watch how those games when they kick off.
Yeah, for sure. And we often get fixated with the big international players. Obviously, you can only have a certain amount in your team in the IPL, but you can't take away from the India depth. And we've seen guys like a Surya Kumar Yadav or a Sanju Samson, for example, guys that have barely even played for India that are just staples in the IPL. So you can't take away from the depth of the Indian talent pool. But looking forward to it getting back underway. It's more cricket, baby. So let's go.
And to finish off Indian cricket news, I think Kohli today actually came out and said after the T20 World Cup, he's going to stand down from being the captain. I'm not sure if he's going to still play in the side, but the idea being he's trying to reset his focus. He's family man now. And travel, etc. The requirement for him as captain, is draining, especially across all three formats. So potentially stepping down from that. I think he probably still plays in the side, but with less emphasis on having to do all the media, having to do all the team stuff. He can just be there as a player, as a batsman.
Yeah, rumours are that Rohit Sharma will take the captaincy. That's not official, but it's just what's being speculated. It is a little unusual, I thought, given that Virat is one of the best T20 players of all time, one of the few guys that averages 50 in T20 cricket, which is pretty hard to wrap your mind around. But we like to harp on it. On the Esky, doesn't have an international ton for close to 2 years, and maybe is wanting to put his focus back into Test cricket and the ODI World Cup that'll be coming up, in a couple of years. And look, we always speak about the depth of India, especially in white ball cricket. Even if he does step away full time, obviously it's a big loss. But you've just got 5 blokes that would be putting their hand up to take a top order role there that would be able to step in. But massive news.
Yeah. I think early reports are that he said he will still continue to be available for selection. But yeah, I suppose that's all just short-term sort of stuff. I don't know what the long-term plan would be.
And you often see that trajectory, when he's not that old, but when guys start wrapping up towards the end of their career, they tend to step away from the T20 internationals first, and then the ODIs, and then the tests, and then right at the very end, they tend to go away from the big money tournaments, the T20 IPL or Big Bash down here.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Pepe, what's happening elsewhere in the cricket world? What are the Saffers up to?
The Saffers destroyed Sri Lanka. We have spoken a bit about it this year. The Sri Lankans actually had them in the ODIs, which was good to see, but they didn't offer much here. And it was all Quinton de Kock, one of my favourite cricketers, probably right up there with Niroshan Dick Weller in terms of the appeal on their name, at least. He was unreal in this series. He only got dismissed once. He 50s and I think a high 30. So he was steering the Saffers with the bat, and it's a really challenging time for Sri Lankan cricket. We have mentioned in the World Cup coming up, they do have to play a few minnow nations just to get into the regular games. I fancy them to do that in the World Cup, but not much more than that. Hard times to be a Sri Lankan cricket fan. I think that the best look. It's sad news in the fact that it's an injury and it's quite serious for Australian Test captain Tim Paine. He had to have surgery on a bulging disc in his neck. But it did spawn one of the funniest videos to come out of this week with ABC newsreader Tony Armstrong. Unfortunately, a little Freudian slip. He had something else on his mind, and he spoke about Tim Paine's bulging dick, and that's been doing the rounds. Quite funny. He realised straight away, which was good, and wore it. And then Tim Paine coming back on Twitter and saying, true story, actually. So I don't know what to make of that. Tim Paine's claiming that his dick is bulging.
Yeah. Well, he was probably looking forward to that India versus England game as well and just didn't get a finish. So, yeah.
Maybe. Watch out, Mrs. Paine, because apparently Tim's got a big bulger just waiting to go. But in all seriousness, and if you haven't seen that, check that out. Just type in ABC newsreader Tim Paine. It's quite funny. But in all seriousness, this is big surgery. Bulging discs are nothing to laugh about unless it's a bulging dick. And it does make you wonder, with the Ashes only 3 months away, how will he recover from this? And could Cricket Australia be going, oh, wait, this is a perfect opportunity to say, thank you, Tim. Thank you for your service after Sandpaper Gate and getting us through this rough time. We appreciate your services, but we're going with someone else. I wonder how it pans out. A lot of it will be based on his recovery, but it just the mind tends to wonder and think, oh, could this be the last we see of Tim Paine?
So, yeah, I think as you mentioned, it probably depends on what the surgery is, whether it's just relief or, worst case, fusing of discs. You wouldn't have think that for him at that age, but you never know. Chronic injury of some description. I think the timing is kind of interesting as well, because I don't think he's played cricket in many months. So whether he's starting to
level, that's for sure.
Yeah, so why this wasn't done a while ago, trying to give him extra prep. So 3 months is still, 12 weeks away, still plenty of time recovery-wise. You'd think to get into getting ready for the Ashes, but like you say, he is definitely getting older. He is on the hot seat a little bit, depending on what happens in those Ashes series. But yeah, like you say, short lease, could be on the move. They got Paddy Cummins waiting in the wings, if not Stephen Smith. Or my favourite, the loose bus change. They've got some options as a potential replacement as a captain if Tim Paine does get shafted.
Shafted. Well, I was going down that same stupid, that same trajectory and thinking I'm big fans of all of those cricketers and wouldn't mind seeing their bulging dicks either coming back and being the Australian Test captain. But all seriousness, wishing Tim Paine all the best with his recovery. And yeah, it does throw a bit of a can of worms into the mix into who will be the Australian Test captain come the first Test of the Ashes.
Yep, definitely. Yep. Well, I just got to hear that heading into, I guess, the surgery and all that sort of stuff, Tim Paine talked to Matt Rogers, who had a similar sort of surgery in his playing career. Apparently Rogers was back playing in the NRL after 6 weeks of the surgery for very similar issues. So
and playing contact sport, high impact. So maybe we're looking into this a little bit too much, and it's only 6 to 8 weeks, and Tim Paine's ready to go.
Yeah, exactly. It could just be a clean-up. They're just going in there, relieve some pressure, clean it up, and then away they go. And
3 orthopedic surgeons here in our wisdom, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. On the medical advice with On The Esky, it's probably better than some of the stuff that you Google medical advice. At least ours don't always end in cancer. I think that's enough talking about bulging discs. Let's talk about some NRL. And essentially, this might give Peps a bulging disc. Manly versus Roosters has kicked off. If you had to pick a first try scorer, who would you pick, Peppy?
Tom Trbojevic.
Tom Trebojevic, first try scorer. Manly
Let's go. We got
4-0.
him for the Punters Club, so the group chat will be going off. That's excellent.
Nice.
We need him into Nature Strip tomorrow in the Group 1 racing. So how good is that? Tommy Turbo, good on you, mate.
Yeah, so kick to come. 5 minutes, just over 5 minutes gone. Manly in front. Kick from sideline. I'll let you know if he kicks that. But let's talk about some NRL news. And it's been the week of sackings. And I think it's a lot of clubs with, let's say, good enough excuses to get rid of contracts of guys that probably got money, a little bit higher money, and they want to clear some space for other guys coming through. We start with Josh Dugan. He was the first one sacked over his COVID breaches. He did 2 or 3, I think, at least 2. I know he doubled up, but he was on decent money, and he had been injured a lot and probably underperforming for what they were paying for him.
Definitely, yeah.
Hated an easy out for the Sharkies to get rid of him. So he has actually also announced his retirement. He said his body is broken down. He did play 215 NRL games for the Raiders, Dragons, and Sharkies. And he did play 12 Origin games and 12 games for Australia. What are your thoughts on that, Peppy? As they did kick that goal too, 6-0 to Manly.
Yeah, sacking is an interesting term here because he was off contract as it was, and it was pretty public knowledge that he wasn't getting renewed here. So whether there was any kind of other financial, ends that needed to be tied up here, if Cronulla even saved themselves any money here.
I think I heard rumours it was like 100K was all they were saying.
Yeah. Well, look, nothing to sneeze at,
right.
but in the terms of the whole team salary cap, not that much. The thing I wanted to touch on was Duke's career. People tend to forget he was an electrifying player, and part, as you did mention, of New South Wales, Origin winning sides, played for Australia, and those early years, especially at Canberra, just an electrifying bloke. Grew up just down the road from us, so I just wanted to commend him on an excellent career. You could definitely tell the last few years his body was beat up. You get, your keyboard warriors liking to get stuck into, he's always injured, Josh Dugan, he's made of glass, etc., etc. Pretty fucking tough sport to play, and you could tell that they signed him on that big contract because he was at the peak of his powers, and he just dropped off physically. So wishing him all the best with his retirement. Hopefully these restrictions get lifted soon, and he can go for some fully sanctioned travel shortly.
Yeah, it does raise an interesting question about those longer term deals, those 10-year deals, because you look at a guy like Dugan, you get 3 or 4 good years out of him, and then his body's spent, especially when some of those conversations are about front rowers, the guys that do the most contact. But hey, maybe take it's risk reward, I guess, in that scenario. And Duke's, not to his disservice, but his body type, he's not a like Man Mountain. He's tall, slender, finesse kind of player, and they're the kind of players that do wear out towards the end of their careers just because of the wear and tear on their bodies for playing 200 plus NRL games.
Yeah, it's a brutal, violent combat sport, or contact sport, I should say. And I agree 100% with you. These 10-year deals that are getting thrown around, even 7 years, they just seem a bit crazy to me.
Especially in this sport.
Yeah, where you can see a guy like Josh Dugan, considerable drop off from where he was a few years ago. But yeah, like I said, all the best to Dukes in his retirement. There was a few other clubs that was swinging the axe. Adam Elliott officially torn. His contract got torn up with the Bulldogs a month after that toilet kissing incident up there. In southeast Queensland, you got to think the Dogs here. Now, this one, if there was salary cap implications, it kind of makes sense. With the likes of Burton and the Fox and Vaughan and Tavita Pangai Jr. all coming across next season.
Plus Gus taking over the club too, wanting to probably clean house a little bit, because the second one was Lachlan Lewis as well, who did Speaker Gate, was also from the Bulldogs. Yeah.
This one
that was the reason I got rid of him.
You know what this one is with Lachlan Lewis? This is it's muck up day. You've played a prank, and then they've gone, hey, guess what, fuckwit? You're not graduating over what you just thought. Over just, was an innocent, innocuous prank. But tore up his contract. Whether or not they were thinking of doing that anyway, and they've just used that as the reason.
Yeah, I think that's the reason.
Hard to tell. Adam Elliott's a pretty handy back rower. A club will pick him up. I've heard West Tigers are interested in his services, and Lachlan Lewis, unsure. I think Super League is maybe where he might end up.
Yeah, I think Adam Elliott was on 600 plus, and then Lachlan Lewis, I think it was 340. And if I'm the Bulldogs, it sounds like get out of free jail cards here. So they've just gone, we can get 900K back and see you later. They've been a bit ruthless there. As Manly score again.
Really?
Try assist. Tommy Turbo. Kieran goes over. 10 kick to come. They'll be 12 in front. Roosters started pretty poorly. The restart at the last try, they kicked it out on the full. So
that never helps.
Yeah, this could be Manly putting the Roosters to the sword if they continue this. Tommy looks so dangerous. Final kind of little bits of news. The NRL did move the preliminary final next Saturday to not clash with the AFL Grand Final. Makes sense, especially I think Melbourne's playing in that game, aren't they? Or potentially.
I think that's why they moved it.
Don't want to fuck with the Melbourne fans.
Yeah, that's right. They're fickle at best. Let's be honest. So the right move, and especially the right move for guys like us who kind of appreciate both codes. I think, back in the day, there used to be a lot of, AFL, that's aerial ping pong from the league fans. And then, the AFL boys would be like, oh, the NRL boys, they're just bloody meatheads. They got no skill with their feet. Whereas I think these days there is a little bit more appreciation, perhaps, across of both codes. You definitely do get the old timers that are stuck in their ways and swing one way or the other. But yeah. Yeah, and I like that. It's good for us, that want to watch both. So the right decision there from the NRL. I think they did backflip. They had stated that they weren't going to, they didn't care what the AFL were doing, where it's pretty clear they obviously do. So right move there. Speaking of right moves, what do you think about Billy Slater? He's been announced as the new Queensland coach. You yourself a Maroons fan, 3-year deal. Do you like this?
Yeah, well, he hasn't officially accepted yet, which is quite interesting. I think Queensland Rugby League's a little bit concerned too, because this deal's been on the table since Monday late last week. To me, it kind of seems like Billy's probably doing his due diligence and going around and having a chat to people, probably putting together staff who's going to work with me. From all accounts, from some of his former players, like his teammates, and people he's worked with in and around circles, that he's got an excellent, footballing mind, and he could very well do this quite handily. And that the worst thing for New South Wales is Billy Slater as head coach. Some of the quotes getting thrown around. So it'd be interesting to see. Hey, if he's got any of the Mal factor or Wayne Bennett kind of factor, that mystique, that's kind of what that role really is. And then you bring in a really good support staff that does all the nitty gritty X's and O's. So potentially, I think it could be really good. He has to accept the deal, and then we'll see what it is in a year's time after the next series, whether we're progressing in the right direction.
And by all accounts, one of the best, league minds in recent memory. Everyone
field.
Yeah, exactly. It probably helps, playing, at the back of Cronk and Smith. But the way that everyone talks about him is not just his athletic ability on the field, but the reason why he'll go down as one of the best fullbacks ever is because of how he read the game and what was going on between the ears. So yeah, I think that's a really good move for Queensland. He's young. I think the boys will get around him, and we'll see what happens. He does still have to accept the offer.
Yeah. Yep. And my last little bit of news before we jump into the finals review, I think each NRL club was given a $7 million stimulus package. And I think the NRL made over $200 million this year. But but for whatever reason still can't do international games and go to the Rugby League World Cup and wants to bring in an extra team to make more money. So we know where our big Dick Volanders' mind is at, and the Queensland government keep throwing cash at him. But it was just an interesting little tidbit that came out during the week. It was like, hey, the local league's all you care about, and you make bulk cash, so good for you.
Well, it also goes to show how little crowds mean to them. It's all TV deals, isn't it? They've been playing in regional Queensland for the back half of this season. We've got these finals this week in Mackay. You know, we're talking about an NRL knockout game in Rockhampton last week, and now we've got 2 games in Mackay. And then, yeah, like we also mentioned last week, mysteriously it goes back to Sun for the big one. But
well,
yeah,
I will say these crowds at these regional games have been good, so they've been getting some decent crowds.
It's great. It's great, but the truth of it is those grounds you're not getting more than 10,000 in there. That awesome. they make their money on TV deals.
Oh, that's more than a West Tigers crowd, but yeah.
Well, no, what about Cronulla? I was harping on them all season with Shark Park getting redone and them having to cross the bridge over and go play at the old enemy Oki Jubilee Stadium, mate. Get more bloody people to a Queanbeyan Blues game.
Yeah, yes. But that's, as you said, that's rugby league at the moment. All right, let's talk about last week quickly and run through the games. We started off, of course, with Melbourne putting Manly to the sword with a 40-12 scoreline there. Ryan Pappenhausen kind of looks like he's back in form. 2 tries, 8 goals, 24 points for him. Absolutely dominant. And DCE's just scored a try. That will make it 16-0 with kick to the post, which will be 18. I didn't catch who assisted him in that. But it looks like a little dummy and he just went himself.
So Manly well on top there, and
complete change of favours. Oh, from a scrum, left foot step straight in. Roosters pretty weak, and I would be worried at this point. That's going to be 18-0 with 20 odd minutes still to go in this half.
It'd have to be. Well, that's a massive turnaround because we all kind of thought that this was a bit of a danger game for Melbourne. I think everyone kind of forgot how good their season's been. You know, there's all this talk around how good Tommy Turbo is, and he is lights out. But it is a team sport, and Melbourne is hands down the best team in the league at the moment. They did win 19 in a row. And look, for the neutral viewer, it was a little bit disappointing to see this blowout so early. Big news around Brandon Smith. Apparently he's been cleared of a fractured cheekbone with the week off. He should be good to go next week in the preliminary final. So good news for the Cheese. Melbourne, it's theirs to lose, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think they were really their game plan, and this was also excellent. They stifled Tommy Turbo. They always had 2 or 3 guys on him constantly. Whenever he touched the ball, they really rallied to take him out of the game. And, you know, that's what I've been saying all year. Manly are one player team. Take him out of the game, and, they can only score 12 points, and Melbourne put him to the sword. Following that was probably the game of the round with the Roosters taking on the Titans, finishing up 25-24. Very entertaining second half for the neutral viewer like us. But we have to say the Titans did absolutely bomb this at the depth. 3-on-1. The centre elects to go himself, as most centres do, unfortunately. All he needed to do a draw and pass. They score, they win this game. But he gets tackled at the 1 yard line, foot out from the goal line. And then that's done. The Roosters get the win here and then look like they're going to get smoked by Manly. So...
Draw and pass. Typical fucking centers. But look, this was the best game of last week to watch for the neutral, as you mentioned. I was edge of my seat kind of shit in this one. Our punters club had the Roosters to win this, so we were pretty invested in it. In that, it turned out to be all for naught because of the next game. We'll get to that in a sec. Roosters up against Manly right now. It seems, look, it's early. We don't want to write it off right now, but it looks like this might be the last 60 minutes of the Chooks season right now. Going back to last week.
Sorry.
No, you go. You go.
I was just going to mention the Roosters did lose their hooker with that very weak shoulder charge.
Yeah, I was going to mention
or like head contact with the shoulder from a falling player. And then I think someone from South's got very, very similar but got let off. So again, I just want to bring it up. Consistency in the NRL doesn't exist. And we'll move into the next game with South taking on Penrith.
So talking of the punters club, mate, Penrith, they fuck me multi. We had a lot riding on this game, and it was hard to watch, but great for the league. A lot of people have been riding off South with Latrell Mitchell obviously getting suspended for the rest of the year. Awesome. They got drubbed by Penrith back in round 12 in Dubbo, and everyone's sort of been sleeping on them. I know, Sean, you've said it multiple times. No, they can't do it. And lo and behold, they go out and win without Latrell Mitchell against Penrith. They are through to a preliminary final. They have a horrible record in the prelims. This is their fourth in a row. They've lost the last three. And Penrith have to go tomorrow night and play the Battle of the West knockout game against the Eels. What do we make of this one, boys?
Well, this South Penrith game, to finish off the point here, I think the difference in this wasn't the playing that happened on the field, but what happened on the sidelines with the coaches. Wayne Bennett, I think, took Ivan to task this week, too busy worrying about blocking tactics and not enough about game planning. Just kind of showed the master that is Wayne Bennett, and then how he can game plan and also get not only the refs on his side, but the popular opinion as well to kind of help elevate his team's potential for winning. And it showed here, did it just enough to get him across the line. And yeah, I give big credit, big raps to Wayne Bennett with his work during the week to get Souths into this position to shock the Penrith Panthers.
What about the back and forth between them? Geez, they were at each other, and Ivan, he kind of sounded like he was whinging a bit towards the end of that back and forth. There's a weird stat around, guys. If you haven't won a comp before you've coached, I think it's 250 games, then no one has done it. So Ivan's above that now. I think Brian Smith famously coached a bunch of games without winning the comp. So, there is this question mark now around Ivan. He's obviously a good coach, but can he put himself, in the category of great and winning a comp? But yeah, Penrith got to play a knockout game tomorrow night, and South through to another preliminary final.
Yep. So then that means the last game was Para taking on Newcastle. That finished up 28-20. Newcastle won and done for the second year in a row. They kind of looked a bit underdone anyway getting into this. But there's a bit of controversy at the end of the death here. Do we think drop kicks are counted leading into tries? And then what about the penalty try as well? So what are your thoughts, boys?
No, I think fair. This should have been a penalty try had the kick been a proper kick, but it was pretty clear on they had several angles of Gutho dropping this ball and then kicking it through. I'm fine with the call if it's a proper kick, but I think you have to consider both. I think the Knights fans were feeling pretty ripped off from this. Monks, what did you see anything on socials or anything afterwards? It looked like there was a big backlash towards this one.
Yeah, no, not too much. I did watch the replay a lot to see if I could find what the VO ref, I guess, was looking at. But yeah, he just straight up drops it cold. Like the ball doesn't change direction from, I guess, a foot movement until after it hits the ground. Like it looks pretty simultaneous, but yeah, in slow-mo, which is where a lot of the decisions are made, he drops it cold and then
it's a ground first. And that doesn't constitute a catch in many sports, so I don't think it constitutes a kick in this one. And I think they changed the rule for this very reason, to take drop kicks out of general play situations as well. So yeah, I also might be in the minority here with the penalty try. I don't think it was 100% certain he was going to get there first. I think 50-50 and maybe leaning slightly the way that potentially he doesn't get there because it was going to be a competitive ball. So I would have given. Do I give a penalty in that situation? Maybe I do. I think that I would try. I don't think I could definitively say he's scoring that, 9 or 8 times out of 10. He might score it 5 out of 10. I think it was a 50-50 ball.
Well, it doesn't really make a difference, does it? Because it's 50-50. So if you're saying it's not a penalty try, then it has to be a professional foul. Yep. And then the other bloke goes in the bin. You can kick the 2 and essentially run out the clock. So whether or not it was a penalty try, I think semantics. I think the big thing they missed was the ball hitting the ground.
Yes. Yeah, I agree.
And again, look, did it rob them the game? No. But it robbed them the chance. It did rob them the chance. Probably got a right to be a bit dirty if you're, if you're a Novocastrian, if you're invested in the Newcastle Knights in this game. But Para go through, and again, the bumhole league, we talk about it. There's no consistency. There's always something to talk about because, shit like this happens. But Para through, and Newcastle would have had a mad Monday the next day.
Yes. I just want to give an update before we talk about the finals preview. The Roosters have just scored. Their right winger has scored. Interesting enough, Teddy goes into a ginormous hole, probably could have scored himself. He's 3-on-1. What does he do? Draws and pass.
Draw pass.
Yeah.
Patrick Herbert from the Gold Coast Titans was watching Teddy do that one. So is that what, 18-4 kick to come?
Kick to come. Yep. Exactly right.
Off the sideline.
Well, that brings us through to our preview of Manly and the Chooks. Obviously, we're halfway through. Hand on heart, I had Manly winning this one. I think they're pretty short priced anyway.
I think the same way. I'm pretty sure I picked Manly. I think we just want to put a spotlight a little bit on Sam Walker as well, because in that game last week, he did kick the field goal to take them ahead, and he's really, the game winner. He's really kind of had a really great year. They're probably protecting him minutes-wise with his usage to finish off the year. I don't think he started in this. I could be wrong.
It named at 14, and that's what makes me ask the question, can you afford to carry a halfback on your bench for the whole game and just bring him in for the last 10 minutes? It looks like they've done the same thing tonight. Obviously paid dividends last week. They won the game off his boot. But, it makes you wonder, why not just start the bloke?
Yeah, I agree. Especially a guy his size. He's not a guy that's going to play any other role but halfback for your squad.
Exactly. Not like a true utility, that you can name at 14. And if someone goes down early, that can play as an outside back or as a half or as a back rower, sort of like a Connor Watson, if you will, a true utility. It's very unusual that they're essentially just picking 3 halves and just sitting Sammy and having him come down out of the death. But can't question it for Robbo. It worked out for him last week. We'll see what his role is tonight as the pod continues.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a bit of mystique about him, as in like the club or the boys really get around him. Like my comparison would be, think of, Tom Brady sitting on the bench in his 50s, but you've got Tom Brady sitting on your bench ready to come on. I just wonder if Sam Walker kind of is that guy for the Roosters at the moment. Like, hey, he stepped up all year. We'd rather have him, even if he's on the sideline, just knowing that he's there, potentially could come on and get us the game winner, that it gives the boys a bit of extra courage to fight late into the game, knowing that, hey, Sammy's going to come on and probably do us a solid here for 10 to 15 minutes, which I think would be amazing for an 18-year-old. But I don't know the reason why you sit him.
Well, that's my concern with that theory, is that the bloke's 18. He's got all the talent in the world, but I don't know if there's that, unification of the boys to play for this guy kind of, mentality. Mm-hmm. The bloke that comes to mind that they have been doing that with is Benji Marshall with South, sitting him on the bench. You got a guy that's 35, 36 that's done it all, and can be that kind of mentor, and maybe that kind of guy that blokes will play for, even if he is only playing a handful of minutes. It just seems strange for mine with Sammy Walker in a finals game to carry him, sitting on the bench and not getting fully involved. But anyways, we're not NRL coaches, I suppose.
No, we're not. Brent Robertson taking a reserve grade squad deep into the finals. So, yeah. So the other match that's going to be played out tomorrow is Penrith taking on Parramatta. We've been calling them pretenders all year, the day of Grolls.
Yep.
I probably was less than impressed with their performance against Newcastle. And I think Penrith are probably going to come flying off last week and want to kind of, put these guys to the sword to get them ready for the following week's game. I've picked Penrith, of course. What do you guys think in this one? Penrith did smash these guys 40-6 2 weeks ago too, I think.
Yeah, very different circumstances, of course, with Parramatta, Brad Arthur just resting essentially his whole side, and Cleary playing a lot of his starters. So take that one with a grain of salt. But I tend to agree with you, Sean. I think Penrith will be stinging after that loss last week to South. They still see themselves as legitimate title contenders, and they'll be out to prove it. It's the COVID world that we live in. It's a battle of Western Sydney, traditional rivals here in the Panthers and Eels, and it's going to happen in Mackay. A very unusual circumstance. But look, good for the citizens of Mackay to see this battle. But I think the Panthers have been too strong. We do talk about the Eels being pretenders, and that they shouldn't have their names thrown out there. With your Melbournes and your Penriths and your South Sydney. However, they are the only team this year that hasn't lost to Melbourne. So I don't know, but I agree. Didn't really look that good against Newcastle last week. Scrappy win, Penrith for mine. Monks, I'd love to hear your tip and the odds, please.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I think I definitely echo you there. They just didn't look too great against Newcastle. I've also gone Penrith. They are favourites at $1.30. Eels are out at $3.65 at the moment, and we've got a line of 10.5.
Don't like that line, to be honest, in a final. But I like Penrith. I still think they're the real deal. Little bump in the road last week, but I think they win this game.
Yeah. And especially, I think 50% of games finished 13 plus this year. So, yeah. Yeah. If anything, you're going overs, but I don't think. Just watch probably the day.
Finals footy is different. The thing that I really enjoyed about last week, obviously Melbourne and Manly was a blowout Friday night, but the other three games were tight, back and forth, highly contested games of rugby league, and we talk about it all year. With expansion, do they have room for another team? Possibly not. But I tell you what, if the games are like this all year, and you could turn the telly on and watch bloody Brisbane play Canterbury, and it was a game like we saw on the weekend. They were great games, and I hope we get the same this weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we'll talk about the NFL product in a minute, but you can see the difference in the product there. Just some final notes. Sammy Walker was just warming up on the sideline, so he potentially could be coming in. But Manly have just scored again from a long range try. No Tommy involved in this one. One of the centres getting the job done here. So 22-4 with a kick to come. 7 and a bit minutes to go in the first half.
Hard to come back from that, Chooks fans.
Yeah, that's probably why they're getting Sammy Walker ready and getting in there now. If he is the saviour, we'll have to see how that goes. How the fuck did a rugby union note get in here?
Well, it's the Wallabies.
Because the Wallabies finally won one.
and they won. So that in itself you'd want to talk about. And the other thing was the star of the game was the illegal immigrant Quade Cooper, who we mentioned a few episodes back. They were trying to bloody kick him out of the country. That's what you get for playing 70 tests for this country. You try and get, someone tries to boot you. If only someone knew someone high up, in the immigration ranks, can bring it up and say, mate, seriously, Wade Cooper, he's a bloody legend. But they beat the Springboks, and they hadn't beaten them since 2018. I think there was only the third time that they'd played since then because of the COVID era that we live in. By all accounts, quite a close game. I didn't watch a minute. You know, my thoughts on rugby, I think the regular listeners probably know all our thoughts on rugby, but they got a win over the Box.
Yeah. If I asked you where would you actually watch this game, you probably wouldn't know how to find it. So that's probably the state of where rugby union's at the moment.
Yes, well, it's on Stan, isn't it? This wasn't on free to air, I don't think. So unless you have
internationals are supposed to be on free to air.
Was?
I think it's supposed to be. I didn't pick it up.
I don't see any fucking advertising for it.
No, neither. I'm just going back over the summary for the game. So the Wallabies won it off 1 try and 7 penalty goals.
Oh, a real thriller. Another rugby thriller.
Yeah.
Look, you got to appreciate the athletes. Like being a forward
100%.
in rugby union, it would be fucking hard work. Like I get that. You could probably chuck. Yeah, I reckon you could chuck me on the wing in rugby union, touch the ball twice and get folded twice, and that's just about all you have to do, really, as a winger.
Perhaps
I don't know where this sport's going.
Yeah, well, if you watched an NFL game where they scored 1 touchdown and kicked 7 field goals, what would you say?
So I wish I had that kicker in my fantasy team because that's a pretty good goal of it. But yeah, I don't know. Look, for me, it's like cricket and baseball. You know, comparable. I love cricket. I'm very impartial to baseball. You've got rugby league. You've got rugby union. For mine, and each to their own, I think rugby league is the much better product.
That's it.
In this country, it definitely gets a lot more backing than the rugby union does.
Yeah, it's in trouble, man. I was having a look at the crowds. Like, this was up in the Gold Coast. No restrictions, I don't believe. They could have had a full house if they wanted to. It's only 25,000 there, I think, out at Rabina, and couldn't fill it out. So yeah, congrats to the Wallabies getting a win, but dire straits for rugby in Australia at the moment.
Yep. And just before we move into the AFL, I can confirm Sam Walker into the game with 5 minutes to go in the first half. So there you go.
Got to play the rest of the game for mine. Have to.
Yeah.
He's probably the rookie of the year. He's only 18. Let him showcase his skills and see what he can do in the second half.
Yep.
So let's talk about AFL. We won't give a preview of the grand final because we'll do that next week as we lead into the weekend of the grand final, which will be the Doggies taking on the Demons. But let's talk about quickly. Well, we wanted to cover last weekend's games because they gave the bye for this weekend. But it was a bit dominant football from 2 teams, that being the Doggies and the Demons, with blowouts. I think each game finished with at least a 10-goal lead, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, 80 and 70 odd points were the differences, and both done by half time. It wasn't like one team kicked ahead, in the second half of either. It was just from the get-go. Especially that Dogs game, that first quarter, that just blew them out of the park. I think they kicked 7 in the first quarter. So yeah, for the neutral, or God forbid, if you're a Port or Geelong Cats fan, very, very difficult viewing last week. Try and focus on some of the highlights. For mine, little park football ruckman here. Love to see big Max Gawn go out and have one of the all-time performances for a ruckman, let alone it being in a preliminary final. 19 possessions, 33 hit-outs, and 5 sausage rolls. He was kicking them straight as an arrow. The captain of Melbourne had an absolute captain's knock in this one. He nearly beat Geelong himself. I think Geelong kicked 6 in this game, so Max was only 1 goal behind them. And then I tell you what, he's a regular contributor to the Esky, Joseph McGrath, Macca, the big toe ball, the big chrome dome. He was up and about last Saturday with the Dogs thrashing Port Adelaide at home. Rumours are he can't appear tonight. I think the blood's only just returned to his head after being situated in his cock for the last week.
He needed bulging dick
Another
surgery.
bulging disc, yep.
Yeah, another bulging dick. Him, Tim Payne. Yeah, a few that internet meme guy. A few bulging dicks for sure. Bailey Smith,
especially for Bailey Smith, let's say as well.
Oh
so,
yeah.
good
Hey,
look.
look. And I argue with my wife all the time about this because she doesn't really rate the Baz Lenker. But I say, I'll tell you what, if I swung it the other way, I'd be sliding into Baz's DMs. He was unreal. 23 posies, 4 goals, and he's just turned. Look, I don't want to say it, but I'm getting dusty feels, where just big game presence shows up in these big moments. A few games in the regular season you kind of thought went a little bit missing, but these last few elimination games has just been red hot.
Yeah, his last the footy's been good. So
yeah, unreal. For sure. We've got the Brownlow coming up on Monday. Monks, if you wouldn't mind bringing up the odds there, we can have a little look there. I think Marcus Bontempelli was the red-hot favourite, say, a month ago or even 5 or 6 weeks ago. But then those 3 losses on the trot for the Bulldogs possibly changed the odds. I believe Ollie Wines and Clayton Oliver might have overtaken him. Monks, have you got them up in front of you there?
Yeah, you're right. So Ollie Wines is favourite at $3.25. Close behind him, Oliver is at $3.75, and then Bontempelli's out at 4 now.
Which is
After
pretty wild,
yeah,
considering we were looking at Bontempelli, 4 weeks out from the end of the regular season at about $2.50. So a lot can change in a month of football. The night of nights, the Brownlow's up there. The Dally M just doesn't compete with that. And even the American sports, their awards nights, I don't know. I think the Brownlow is my favourite awards night. The girls obviously all get dressed up. A little bit different last year with COVID and Lachie Neale, presenting himself with the medal. But it's right up there with one of my favourite awards nights, and especially a year like this where there's legitimately 3 or 4 blokes that could win it. I'm looking forward to Monday night. And tips wise, it was a month ago. It was the Bont, but Ollie Wines has been spectacular. The only guy on his team that would take votes away regularly would be Travis Boak. Good bloke, you'd think. And then the Clayton Oliver, always has 30, always involved. He's a possession machine. But then again, you kind of got to think the influence of Petrarca and Gawn taking votes away. Even their backs, like the year that Salem's had, and May and Lever might have even pinched a couple here and there, which is pretty unbelievable out of backs. Bailey Fritsch has been unbelievable. I just wonder if there's too many demons, too many mouths to feed at the Melbourne Football Club for Clayton Oliver to take it out. If I had to pick, gun to my head, I'll go with Ollie Wines.
Yep, I think that's a pretty good and fair assessment there, Peps. You've covered that. My thoughts as well. There's plenty of guys that get a lot of possessions these days. You got to do more and have a huge impact to kind of put yourself ahead to get those votes. So,
well, again, it's not just all about getting ball, is it? Because no one's talking about Jack McRae winning the Brownlow medal, and I think he had the most possessions ever in a season. Yep. You got to use the footy as well as getting it. But yeah, night of nights, can't wait. We'll probably be just as interested in seeing what the Wags are rocking up in as what the actual the scoring and the voting turns out. But yeah, I really like the Brownlow, and it's a good reason to stay up a bit late on a Monday night and just inject a little bit more sport into your week.
Exactly. You said night of nights just before. I'm having a look at the Brownlow novelty bets. Night of nights, a sure bet at $1.01.
To be said.
To be said at some time during the broadcast.
What's the next one? Give us the top 5, Max.
What was
Top
it on the
five?
Esky? Because I just said it about 4 times.
That's it. So we had Night of Nights. After that, at $1.02, we've got Dusty,
Yeah.
$1.05. We've got Mullet, $1.08. We've got He Had a Much Better Season Than Me. And then rounding out top 5 at $1.10, and we had It Would Be Nice to Win, but
Real opening ceremony vibes with Bruce and all their Bruceisms that he.
Well, yeah. Speaking of that, Winks is at $3.25.
So they've learned from the Olympics, because Vince managed to sneak in at about 14s there, and I think a few punters went home pretty happy there that Winks got a mention in the human Olympics. Tokyo.
You just mentioned Olympics twice. That's sitting at $2.75 at the moment.
You know, I was watching the NFL. Sorry to cross codes, but we will get to it in just a moment anyway. And gambling off your phone has only just become legal over there. So now you're getting saturated with all the sports books, their advertisements over there. And we are leaps and bounds ahead of them, obviously, with the markets that we have over here. You can just pretty much punt on anything over here, can't you?
That's it.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So well, I'll be interested to see how that goes for a sporting wise. I don't think it's going to impact the sport, but you never know. Corruption is a massive thing, and we will see. But speaking of the NFL, I think we should get stuck into the NFL. Week 2 preview. We did have the Thursday night football game today. That was between the New York Giants and the football team out of Washington. It ended up being a pretty good close match. Less defensively wise. I think what did it finish up? It was 29-27.
29 as 1 point, I think. 29-28.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of blokes are thinking bet the unders here. Washington's defense, especially their front seven, quite renowned, and the Giants secondary, with the likes of Jabril Peppers and James Bradbury, Logan Ryan. A lot of people have been talking about them having one of the better secondaries getting around, and that actually ended up turning out to be a bit of a shootout and a really entertaining Thursday night football game. When I looked at this on the draw, I kind of thought, take it or leave it. And I was on the edge of my seat the whole game. I feel for Giants fans. This was a very New York Giants way to lose a football game. They jumped off sides in the game-winning field goal attempt from Dustin Hopkins. He pushed it wide right, but because of the offside, re-kick, it started quite right again, the re-kick, but it just went through, and the football team get the home win, a massive win there. The Giants had actually won their last 4 matchups against the football team. Daniel Jones had never lost to him, so there's one for you. He was looking like Lamar Jackson out there. You see him. They had a few quarterback design runs out there. He had a touchdown. He should have had 2. One went back on a dubious holding call. Yeah. And what did we make of Taylor Henneke, I should say, in his first start for the football team?
Well, he must have watched Derek Carr last week, because it didn't matter if Scary Terry was double teamed or triple teamed. He was just throwing the ball up to him. He's just like, I'll put it in that vicinity and hopefully he'll come down with it. Because I think he had 19 targets for 11 catches in this game, something ridiculous.
Yeah, over 100 yards and a touchdown. You had him in your top 10 receivers, I believe, of last year. I thought, he was an honourable mention, but not in my top 10. I think this year he definitely has to come into my top 10, and you can tell he's obviously the wide receiver one by a long way there at Washington. But this was a big result, because this division is notoriously close. It's notoriously bad. So big implications out of that game today. But for me, didn't have a horse either way. Was just happy to see a really entertaining game of football.
Yeah, Monks, you might need to fact check this for me, but I think the Giants have started 0-2 the last 4 years in a row as well. So bit of Carlton vibes there. So, but it was also interesting. Giants should have won this game. One, they had that holding penalty of Danny Dimes to bring it back. Then I think he had Slay open with about no one within 20 yards of him.
Yes.
And just overthrew him, I reckon. I think Slay was done by that. He should have caught it. It was just out of his reach. It was close, but.
Well, I was having this argument in another fantasy league, boys. I'm two timing it this year. The first time I've done two fantasy leagues. I don't think this is overthrown, because if you get two hands to it as a receiver and there was no one in his postcode, you gotta catch that ball. You gotta catch that ball. Agreed as well. You can go back and say, look, there's no one there, so he doesn't have to put it out in front like that. But for mine,
it was on the fingertips. He fully extended arms. Like, I think it was more on Danny. He could have pulled that one in and gone, "Oh, this is a gimme," and just lobbed it up to him because they were going to score that.
No such thing as a gimme in my golf game. I'm putting this one on the receiver. All my football game, I probably would have dropped it too back in the day. That was the position that I played.
Anything in the end zone for you was drop city. So,
well, this actually wasn't in the end zone. This was about 10 yards short of the end zone. And on top of that, if we are comparing to myself, this would have been 20 yards overthrown me because I wouldn't have had the speed to be there.
Yes. Anyway, let's get stuck into some other games. There's a few divisional battles coming up, and we start with the Patriots taking on the Jets first off. What did we think of Mac Jones taking on the Finns last week?
Pretty good. There in the Bama Bowl against his old teammate Tua Tagovailoa. Really close game. Really quite interesting game.
I definitely like that and like what Mac Jones was doing for them.
You've got him as Rookie of the Year, don't you?
I think he definitely could be. His probably main competition might be Zach Wilson, who then played for the Jets as well on the other side. Because I'm not sure the running backs, I don't think will get enough carries, and maybe one of the wide receivers like, say, Jamal Chase, after his big weekend, potentially is on track. But I think with the quarterbacks and those two getting starts, they could definitely put up some really good numbers. And Zach Wilson wasn't too bad in that loss to the Panthers there. He had Corey Davis had a big day.
Yeah, I was very thrilled to have him on a fantasy bench. I'm happy that I picked him up because I was thinking a lot of guys are sleeping on this guy, Corey Davis. He's tall, he's built. He's obviously going to be their wide receiver one, and it seems like him and Zach Wilson are connecting pretty early on. In terms of this game, though, he's going to get Steph Gilmore, so I don't know if that will be a favourable matchup here. And again, look, the Jets weren't bad last week against the Panthers, but they're still the Jets. I think the Patriots win this one.
Yeah, I'm going Patriots here too. And Mac Jones, it looks like he's already got a bit of chemistry with Smith and Henry as his tight ends. So they're looking like they're playing that Patriots offense of yesteryear, I think 2011, 2012 kind of design there. So
the Gronk and the Murderer days.
Yes. So I've picked Patriots in this one. Thanks. Tips and odds.
Yeah, I picked Patriots. I'm just bringing up the odds now. So you're right. The last time the Giants had a win in the first two games was back in 2016.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure that's five years in a row of 0-2.
Yeah. So Patriots are favourites leading into the match. They're $1.38 at the moment. New York Jets are out at $3.05, and we have a line of 6. Or 5 rather.
Bit too short, I reckon. $1.38 away at the Jets. I don't know if we'd be punting on that.
Before we get in the next, Monks, is it a little bit warm over there?
It is a little bit warm. And I'm on to my second beer.
You're very red there, my little man.
Getting a bit of that flush.
I am. It's a small study. It's really warm.
He's finally grown into his mustache.
You don't get it like you
get it. I can't talk. Well, I'm all orange today, so there you go.
I can't talk either. My skin might not change, but the dribble definitely does. So, we're all cut from the same cloth. Let's be honest.
Yeah. Let's see if I can change up the lighting.
I mean, that's that looked much better. Yeah, dim the lights.
All right,
there
let's go
you
with
go.
that.
All
Just
right.
the lighting.
That's
all
the
it is.
old stripper technique. Just turn the lights off a little bit. And, you probably added 2
Just
points to
chuck
your,
on some of
rating out of 10.
that mood lighting.
There you go.
Anyway, let's talk about some Broncos and Jags. My Bronx did beat the Giants last week, and after the way Giants played today, I was very it was an impressive win, and then I think even more impressive. But they do take on the lowly Jags, who were beat bad by Houston. And what was it, 38-3? I think the score in that game or something.
They scored a few late, so I think it was 37-21. But it was over early. This one, obviously, probably the big story was Trevor Lawrence's first start, the number 1 draft pick, football Jesus, and also his first regular season loss ever. So didn't lose in the regular season in college or high school. But yeah, he's going to have his work cut out for him. It wasn't so much him as that Jaguars defense. They were bad. They were really bad. Tyrod had a game. I don't know how to make of that. If Tyrod is that good, or if it was just a function of the Jags defense being really bad. And an interesting thing here was James Robinson, who was the pickup, the free agent of the year last year, made the NFL top 100. He was number 100. He barely got the rock in this one. It was all Carlos Hyde. Don't know how much to make of it. Sean, you obviously would have watched a bit of Denver. You said you're pretty confident with them. You'd think they take business pretty well here against Jacksonville?
Yeah, I do. I just want to go back to your point on Carlos Hyde. I think the reason Carlos Hyde's getting the rock a bit more, or getting on the field for steps, is just because of the style of play that Trevor Lawrence plays. James Robinson's a between the tackle, pound the rock under center, whereas Trevor Lawrence has more spread the ball out and pass to the running back. Carlos Hyde is the better receiving back for the two. So potentially that's why he could be sneaky good pickup for fantasy fans, because the Jags are going to be behind a lot and need to pass a lot. And they're going to need the receiving back in that backfield, which is Carlos Hyde, which is the reason why they drafted Etienne in the draft for their first round, because they needed a receiving back to put in their backfield.
Yeah, and very sadly, not available through to that season-ending injury, and we've seen a lot of running backs go down already,
especially Phillies, and especially if you're in the Ravens team. Broncos for me on this one.
The Ravens curse. We'll get to them in a second. Broncos here. I'd love to know the odds there, Monks, if you wouldn't mind, and your tip.
Yep. I've gone Broncos as well. They are favourites at $1.35 at the moment. The Jags are out at $3.20, and again we've got a line of 5.
So very similar odds to that Patriots Jets game. I'm more confident in the Broncos than the Patriots.
Yeah, I think there's a bit juicy, some of those numbers you got there, James, especially Lawrence threw 3 picks in the last game. And I think Broncos D is a lot better than what the Houston's D currently is. So, especially Von Miller back 2 sacks last week. Hasn't left, baby.
Yeah.
Welcome to the NFL, Trev.
That's it. Broncos plus 14 is $3.06. Minus that?
Minus 14, yeah.
That was plus 14. So 1 to 13 is $2.43.
Oh, we're there. Okay.
Yep.
So next game, Bills taking on the Dolphins. Bills did have a bit of a shock loss to the Steelers last week, which was Monkey's pick.
Monks, you got this. I was listening back. You didn't really have any sound reasons for the tip, but look, Steelers with Big Ben is different to with Mason Rudolph, and I think a lot of people had kind of underestimated that, and also that they went 11-0 last year before the wheels came off. I think a lot of people.
They start hot, so they've started.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
Big Ben's healthy and not worn out. They start hot.
Yeah. Again, I think this was one of the ones last week where like the odds were on Buffalo, but the fans were heavy on the Steelers. And that seemed to be the way it went, really.
Big time.
Yeah.
I should have listened to you and fucking put $50 on the Steelers. I was confident with the Bills going to the AFC Championship game last year and Josh Allen having a career year. You can't write off Pittsburgh. That AFC North, we were talking about a different game, but the Steelers were very good. The Dolphins just getting over the Patriots. AFC East divisional matchup here. It is in Miami. I've got the Bills to bounce back here. I think they go down and get the win there. But yeah, less confident after what we saw last week. A lot of people had the Bills right up there again this year. It is only one game, but I think the Bills just here.
I'm going Bills as well. Potentially, I think they might do a little bit better than you think, Pepe. But as last week kind of showed, the NFL's very much worked out how to have high-scoring, close games and to produce a really entertaining product. So I think, again, points probably in this one, but close, and I've gone Bills. Tips and odds, mates?
Yeah, I've gone Bills as well. They are favourites $1.52. The Dolphins are out at $2.55 at the moment, and we've got a line of 3. Total match points of 47.
So the bookies reckon pretty close score. Pretty close one.
Yeah.
I would have thought the Bills might have been a bit shorter than that. That's very interesting.
Then we roll into the next game of the 49ers taking on the Eagles, and the Eagles are probably the talk of the town at the moment after a red-hot start to the season, and the only team in their division to have won a game so far, besides the one today with the two playing each other. The 49ers, on the other hand, did start off well as well. They did, but they were playing the Lions, and they did take a massive lead, but almost bottled it in the process. But of course, both teams coming off a win. Eagles looked awesome against the Falcons, who have no defense. So make of that what you will. But this game will be interesting. But I think the big note here is we've got to shout out the big Australian for getting paid at left tackle. Big Jordan. I think he gets, what were the numbers? 60 a year, 80 guaranteed or something. No, 60 guaranteed, 80 potential.
60 guaranteed. Yeah, over 4 years.
Yeah.
So he's locked in for $15 million US, and then there could be up to 80 with incentives. So I put it to you in the group chat this week. I was thinking, geez, that's got to be one of the highest paid Australian athletes ever. It's hard to find a comprehensive list. We had been doing our research, and it is kind of also difficult between bonuses and endorsements. We've got him third. We've got him third in terms of Aussie athletes on the earners list, behind Danny Rick, who we spoke about, or we will speak about later in the show. A lot of his is incentive based, and Ben Simmons in the NBA. I think Jordan Mailata is the third highest paid Aussie athlete given this new deal, and what a risk for him to give up on a promising rugby league career. People were saying that he might be too big to play league. They didn't think maybe that he had the cardio. Yeah, well, that's right. Who'd be the heaviest player in the NRL these days? Maybe Junior Paulo. He'd be about 120 kgs.
Yeah, but he's not 6'8", so.
That is true. But my lighter is 380 pounds. That's 157 kilos for our Aussie listeners. So 30 kilos heavier and then some than the heaviest bloke in the NRL. Moral of the story is it fucking paid off because he now earns, what were we saying? Two salary caps for an NRL side.
Yeah, he gets the same amount of money as 2 NRL teams in one season.
Unbelievable.
And he's been playing the sport 3 years. So he's only... which is bananas. It just shows he is a big man with athletic talent, and he had the footwork. He definitely translated what they had from rugby league and has gone over there and shown that he can apply it. Plus, he's a enormous man. He's got the strength. Some of the highlights of his work from the game against the Falcons, he was absolutely lighting up some of the defensive players, showing the boys how it's done. But yeah, they've really credited him as the future of the left tackle there for the Eagles, and he'll have to protect Hurts for the rest of the season.
Yes, shout out to Big Jordan. He's making 2 NRL salary caps, or as you like to say at the Sydney Roosters, 2 blokes salary.
Yes. Depending on what books you're looking at. And it's also interesting, we had those 3, and they're very much clear of anyone else we could think of. They probably got 10 mil on whoever's in 4th place. We did think about the guys over in NASCAR, Will Power at Indy. Some of the guys are playing soccer, the boys and girls playing tennis, but they're winning some more.
Hardy would have to be right up there. But her career earnings were about 24 mil, I think.
So I think it was total, but still but in a calendar year, these guys are still earning, that equivalent. And any of the local codes, they're very much a distant dollar figure to what these boys are pulling in.
And you know what we didn't consider in this? The Aussie punters. The Aussie punters in the NFL are probably all in the top 10. Yeah, but that can be something for future discussion. But anyways, the take-home message was, well done, Jordan. In 3 years, going from playing junior football for South Sydney to being one of the highest paid Aussie athletes of all time, and this Philadelphia Eagles side getting a convincing win last week. In terms of game, you got something?
Yeah, just a quick search. So the Seahawks punter, Michael Dixon, he did sign a 4-year, $16 million deal, or 21 mil Australian. I think that was either the end of last year or the start of this season. So what does that work out? Quick math. It's $3 million.
4 years.
$4 million. Yeah. So he probably be up there as in the, in that top 10. So yeah, which is funny.
Isn't it? Yeah.
You got a left tackle and then a bunch of punters. So yeah, for those AFL boys, if you kick far, punting pays well.
That's it. And outside of that, the more generic message is just keep punting, boys. Just keep punting. You'll get that bag one day.
That's it. I'm just having a look at Ash Barty now. So this is 2020, but Forbes ranked her as the 3rd highest paid female athlete in the world, off the back of the earnings of 13 mil and 10 mil in prize money.
So yeah, you probably put her in 4th in our current list.
Yeah. Yep. So I suppose I guess with tennis, it'd be one of those ones where it depends on how many Grand Slams you're winning while you're on tour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and famously went out very quickly in the recent US Open as well.
Which we'll talk about in a sec. Another thing we haven't considered is the golfers in Cam Smith and Mark Leishman. But let's talk about this football game, and maybe down the track we can work out this list of Aussie athletes and their earnings. Both teams coming off wins. The Eagles, hard to gauge against a pretty ordinary Falcons team, but then on the flip side, the 49ers nearly bottled this game against a pretty ordinary Detroit Lions team. What do we see happening here, boys? This one is a bit hard for me. It's at Philadelphia.
I don't want to pick the Eagles, but I'm going to pick the Eagles.
Okay. I like it. I like that. I do like that. I've gone the other way. I think the 49ers sort of got complacent last week. They had a massive lead and gave up a few points in garbage time, essentially. I still think they're not a bad side. Flip of a coin, but I've gone the Niners.
Thanks, tips and odds.
Yep. I have also got a 49ers. No real confidence with that one either. the odds are. So they're favourites, $1.60 at the moment. Eagles are out at $2.34, and we've got a line of 3.
That is too short for mine. I won't be punting on that. In the city of brotherly love, their hostile crowd, hostile fans. I think, they should be favourites, but it's no sure thing there.
No. I suppose, 49ers, I guess what hurt them last year was the injuries, and they haven't had too many so far. Well, more sets out.
Yeah,
Is probably the biggest one there.
The big one.
For the year, it seems.
Yeah.
Thornton, I picked up that Eli Mitchell, his backup. All talks were that Trey Sermon, the rookie running back, was going to be the number 2 there. We didn't really see him, and we've seen this Eli Mitchell. So I'm hoping, as a fantasy owner, that he continues in a Shanahan offense. Who knows? The running backs seem to get treated like playing cards, essentially. But yeah, a very interesting game here.
Yeah. Before we get to the next one, Manly have scored 2 back-to-back tries, 36-6. That game is done.
Done. Manly going through to a preliminary final.
Still 30 minutes to go.
Yeah, I like to heap shit on them, especially as a Dragons fan, salary cap, sombrero kind of chat. But a team to have lost as many blokes this year to injury and forced retirement. Shout out to them for going as far as they did. And also I'm happy to see Manly go through. Just as a Turbo fan, not a fan of the club by any means, but interesting to see what Turbo might be able to do next week in a prelim.
So back to the NFL. The next game we have is Rams taking on the Colts. Rams were good in Sunday Night Football as expected. With crowds at SoFi Stadium is unreal. That is an excellent football ground too, by the way.
I think they spent $6 billion on it, or $8 billion or something. It's not like there's a homeless problem in Los Angeles or anything. I love it. That just went into the football stadium.
Pretty much. The Colts, on the flip side, went down to the Seahawks. Wentz did play in that. The interesting news for the Colts is Hard Knocks is going to do an in-season show, and they're following the Colts around. So it'll be quite interesting to see how that goes. It'll be in a fly on the wall within the season. Yeah, first time they've done that.
So is the Cowboys one going to be done, and then they're going to jump over to the Colts? Is that how it's going to work?
Yeah, I believe so. I believe that's the plan.
Did you guys watch the Cowboys? I know it's a different game, but we're on the subject. Man, the cut day. Oh, I'm no Homer Simpson here. I couldn't be cutting people like that. They get you just so invested, and oh man, just the cuts. It was hard watching for me. But then you've got the practice squad. They still get paid handsomely, I guess, compared to a regular person to be on the practice squad. But yeah, pretty hard to watch, and another insight into how cutthroat the business is.
Yeah, well, they get paid more than first graders. Most of the first graders in the NRL. So
true. Yeah.
What do you think of this?
250. I looked it up. It's about 250 Australian to be on a practice squad.
Well, I think veterans get more. I think it's 300K minimum for veterans on the
Australian on a practice.
No, the US dollars. Doesn't matter. We don't need to talk about semantics. Yeah. Let's talk about this game. And I think the Rams are better than the Colts are at the moment. Colts, I think, just need to find their offensive identity with Wentz over there at the moment. Whereas Rams, Stafford just walked straight in that building and they just look good.
How about his first throw ever as a Ram was that big play action and just went deep, put it on a dime. And I think his passer rating was perfect for the game. So an absolutely stunning debut for Matt Stafford there. I agree, Sean. I think the Rams are the better side here. I think the Colts are maybe a bit better than the Bears, and it is in their house. But I've got the Rams.
Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, I've gone Rams as well. They just finding the odds here. They are favourites, $1.52. The Colts are out at $2.55 at the moment, and we've got another line of 3.
Close games.
Interesting that AFC South, because the Titans were pretty dismal, and the Colts not looking great. They're maybe on track for an 0-2 start here. So maybe the AFC South kind of getting a little bit of NFC East vibes about that division.
Next football match we had was the Raiders taking on the Steelers. Both those teams won in upsets. The big talk for the Raiders was the unbelievable game of Darren Waller, the baller in this. Didn't matter what coverage he was in, Derek Carr just threw it up and he managed to come down with it more often than not. I think, having to win that game twice on Monday night and then also having the pick come off a helmet was such a wild ending to a football match. But in this one, I just think the Steelers and that defense are too good for what the Raiders put together. I'm picked Steelers.
I like the pick. I just want to go quickly back to that Monday Night Football game because that was one of the craziest games in recent memory. It looked like the Ravens had done it all with a big Lamar Jackson. I think he ran for 29 yards on a 3rd down and long to get them into field goal range. And then the Raiders managed to get a field goal to take it through to overtime. And then it was just a comedy of errors in terms of turnovers and drop balls and just utter ridiculousness, really. There was who was it that nearly scored and he got tackled, a foot out.
Was it Brown?
For the Raiders? Yeah.
Was it Brown Hollywood? Because it wasn't Watkins or Sneed. I'm pretty sure it was Brown. It had to be Brown.
Yeah, possibly. And then there was like essentially everyone on the field shaking hands and shit. They're like, no. We gotta go back and
coach is
have
running back to the locker room.
yeah, that's right. Go back, and then the Raiders turned it over from 1 yard.
It's Raiders. It was Braylon Edwards. That's who was downed.
That's who it was. Braylon Edwards.
Yeah.
And they had to try and punch it in from the 1 yard line, and they turned it over. And you thought, fuck me, what's got this is a game that just keeps on giving. And then the Raiders finally got home. And again, like the SoFi Stadium, that Allegiant Stadium there in Las Vegas, on the Las Vegas Strip, their first game with crowds, that looks fucking sick. Boys, when we're allowed to travel in the year 2050 or whenever it may be, I think I've got the first weekend planned. We fly into LA. SoFi Stadium is about 15 minutes, give or take. LA traffic's 2 hours, perhaps. From the airport, we go in there. We catch a game at SoFi. There's a casino across the road from that, and then hopefully we can line it up to be at Allegiant Stadium, which is on the Las Vegas Strip the next day or that weekend. I've got it all planned out. We will be about 70.
Yeah, I was going to say, Pep. So I was just like, I'm 100% with you. Do the quick math. How old will we be? We will be 70. These odd codgers will be rocking up there to watch some football.
Probably
I'm going to drop it out there.
By then.
No, 70 will be in the new 40. Don't worry. We'll be all jacked up on stem cells and shit that's not legal right now. Marky's going to have a full beard. Like, he's going to check this out, boys. We've been working on this for fucking 50 years. It's going to be good. My back's going to be about 90 degrees because I'll be tall and frail. I can't.
Little bit of incentive here. We've got a Bucks party for me. I've got to plan next year, so.
Oh, open them borders.
Let's get back to this. You said all this stuff about the Raiders, Peps. Did you pick them?
No. No. I think the Steelers at home. Hey, and let's go back to what I was talking about before in that Steelers-Bills game. I was saying that a lot of people are sleeping on the Steelers. That they're a good team. They've got one of the best defenses in the NFL right now. It's a tough ask, I think, for the Raiders to go to Heinz Field and win this. I've tipped the Steelers, but the Raiders won't be bad, I don't think. Monks, the odds and the tip, if you wouldn't mind.
Yep. Yeah. So I'm doubling down this week on this tip. Both tips and fantasy. I've gone the Raiders for the win. I've dropped the Steelers as my defense for fantasy, so I'll be coming back here next week completely regretting that. Steelers are favourites,
What's
$1.35.
he thinking, man?
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I did pick up the Patriots D against the New York Jets, so
Streamer boy over here.
stream
Thinks
the
one of the-
defense.
Picks two defenses and then wants to stream. Like,
I'm not talking about
Yep.
a fantasy tip. I'm talking more about the tip in this game. Why do you think the
Why do you
Raiders can go to Pittsburgh and get a win here?
I honestly don't know. I don't know why I've done it.
Which is exactly what
I
you
think
said
it is
last week against the Bills, and you got
It
it. So maybe there's
It
a bit
is.
of method to the madness here.
I think maybe. Look, yeah, the Steelers. I mean, yeah, they did play well last week. They did beat the Bills. I probably wouldn't rate the Bills all that highly anyway. Raiders seemed electric, like we were talking about. I don't know. I just thought it was an okay smoky for the week. I could be regretting this severely though next week. We'll have to wait and see.
One smoky work last week. I suggest all listeners put your house, wife, kids on the Raiders to win.
Yeah. What were the odds?
Glad you said it and I didn't. Yeah, so Steelers are favourites $1.35. Raiders are out at $3.23. The line is 6. Total match points is 46.
I still like the Steelers. Anyways, moving forward.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of games to sort of run through. So the next one, we got Bengals Bears. Bengals coming off OT win against the Vikings. Vikings look a little bit dismal, I thought. Joe Mixon, with no competition in the backfield, had an absolute field day. The Bears on the flip side went down to the Rams, as talked about there. They did run the ball fairly well. Also, this is in Chicago. Not sure. I think I actually picked Bengals in this. I think I went a bit of an upset for me.
Are the Bears favourites? I would have thought this might be pretty close. I'll go the Bears here. I don't think they were that bad. They were just behind the whole game against the Rams, which hurt. They were able to move the rock with David Montgomery. The Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, wasn't too bad. Look for Justin Fields to just get more and more involved in Chicago's offense.
He scored twice.
I think. Say again.
Did he score twice? And you got one.
One. He had one rushing touchdown, a few completed passes, and they were just kind of bringing him in as a red zone or third down kind of threat. I think this would just be a slow passing of the torch over to Justin Fields, and I think it will be his team, say week 4, week 5. But in terms of this one, it's hard. I've gone the Bears.
Monks, split the difference. Who are you picking on odds?
Yeah, I've gone Bears as well. They are favourites. Probably one of the closest ones of the week, though. They are sitting at $1.75 at the moment. Bengals are out at $2.11, and we've got a line of 2.
Yeah, bit of a coin flip in that one for mine. Moving forward to one which should be pretty clear cut, you'd think, in the Texans and the Browns. Look, a lot of people are shitting on the Texans, saying they're the worst team in football leading into the season. They looked really good. Tyrod was excellent. Mark Ingram got a lot of ball for them. I don't know if it's the Texans being good or the Jags being bad. Maybe a little bit of both. And the Browns, I'll tell you what, they nearly went to Kansas. They nearly went to Arrowhead and knocked off the Chiefs. They're the real deal. They're the real deal. The AFC North is fucking stacked. I think at home, in the dog pound, the Browns get the job done here. The one thing I wanted to mention from this one was no OBJ.
I just checked. He's ruled out for this game as well.
Do you know what the injury concern is?
I can double check for you again.
Because it seemed very late, and I'm just not sure what's going on with OBJ. Jarvis Landry was good, scored a really tough touchdown on a end around against the Chiefs, in which he broke a few tackles to get in. Baker looked pretty good. Myles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney, they're forming one of the better tandems in the NFL in terms of a defensive pass rush. Have you got any news there on OBJ, Sean?
Still says he's recovering from that left knee injury, which I think plagued him last year. So obviously he maybe through camp and running in the preseason, it swelled up a bit and they're just managing it and trying to get him right. A game against the Texans, you probably don't need him. And I think Browns by a lot.
Yeah, fair. I've gone Browns. Line might be a bit more interesting than the head-to-head here, but who knows? Everyone's been sleeping on the Texans, and they went out and they're 1-0. So who knows?
Max?
I've gone Browns as well. They are favourites. One of the heavy favourites for the week at $1.14. The Texans are out at $5.75, and that line is 12.
See, that is very, very short for mine. I do think the Browns win that, but I won't be touching that line for mine. Let's head over to the NFC South. We've got two teams coming off wins, the Saints and the Panthers. The Saints were really, really good. They were actually outsiders against my pack. Jameis Winston, we were having a laugh about him last week, 30-30, etc., etc. Yeah, how about this one? 20 passes, 5 touchdowns. That's a pretty good bloody effort.
I think it's 14 completions as well. So
14 completions, yeah. So 1 in 3 completions were a touchdown for Jameis. Their running game, they ran the fuck over the Packers. Obviously, Alvin Kamara, but this Tony Jones coming along as well with a few handy runs. And we spoke about it last week in our preview. I mentioned their defense being sneaky good. I need to refine that. Their defense is good. The Pack, we'll get to them in a second. They were horrendous. The Panthers, and Sean, you shouted him a beer. Christian McCaffrey, he's back, baby. The number one pick off most people's fantasy boards. And guess what? He was the number one fantasy running back this week. He catches the ball heaps out of the backfield. He got in for actually no, he didn't score a touchdown. Actually, I don't think so. He went off without even finding the end zone. I think he had about 9 catches and a bunch of yards. Yep. So he is back, baby. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he didn't score. I think I lost a multi perhaps on that. What are we thinking here, boys? I imagine the bookies have got the Saints pretty handily favoured after what they did to the Packers. I've gone the Saints.
And Saints as well. I think it's going to be a good game of footy, though.
It could be. Let's not get look. We've only got one game of football to go off, right?
Yeah.
The Saints destroyed the defending NFC. Not the NFC champs, a team that made the NFC Championship game. Okay, the Saints destroyed them. The Panthers just got over the New York Jets. So let's consider that. I've gone Saints, and I think the Saints win there in Charlotte.
Max, tips and odds?
Yep. Yes, just back on McCaffrey. So he didn't score a touchdown, but he led both rushing and receiving yards for the Panthers. So Saints are favourites. Not too heavy, fairly similar odds to some of the other matches we've previewed already. So they're favourites at $1.51. Panthers are out at $2.58, and we've got a line of 3.
I haven't liked too many of these odds so far. I did tip the Packers to beat the Saints last week, so take what I say with a grain of salt. But yeah, I don't mind the Saints at that value there. And that's all the early games there on Sunday. Let's whip through the late games on Sunday. The Vikes take on the Cardinals. The Vikes went down to the Bengals in overtime. The Cardinals, they smoked the Tennessee Titans. Chandler Jones, he had 5 sacks, if you don't mind. And Kyler looked really, really good. We had spoken about it last week about that NFC West being very strong this year, and the Cardinals look like the real deal. I've tipped the Cardinals here at home. I think they win this quite comfortably.
Yeah, I agree. Cards by a lot for me. Max?
Yep. I've gone Cards as well. They are favourites at $1.50. $2.51. Vikings are out at $2.58 at the moment, and we've got a line of 3.
That sounds tasty to me.
Yeah. The next matchup, Falcons are taking on the Buccaneers. Bucks, big favourites, of course, here after their win over the weekend. Return of AB and Gronk for the Buccaneers. They were very dominant, and Tom Brady. I think we covered that in the last potty as well, how excellent they were in that game. I did, and Marks has just added the note here, Tom Brady put a vid out on, I think, his socials after winning in the background. It had the 3:28 is the time on one of the clocks to kind of throw back to their
his screensaver in the background.
Yeah. He's a competitor. We all know that. Falcons against the Eagles. I don't think there's much to talk about in this. Bucks by a lot.
Yeah, Bucks. The only thing I'm interested in is the line.
Yeah, Bucks.
Yeah, obviously Bucks as well. They are favourites $1.13. Falcons are out at $6.05 at the moment. We have a line of 12.
Oh, I like that.
Yep.
The Eagles just destroyed them, and this is in Tampa. Either can.
Total match points of 51 as well, which is sort of in line with that.
Yeah, I don't think Falcons can score enough points to get to that though.
No, I agree. But Bucks with that line, I love that.
Yep.
The Bucks secondary. Sorry, just back on that. The Bucks secondary did look a little bit susceptible against the Cowboys. So whether that plays into it against the Falcons, obviously Matty Ice. I'm not too sure, but yeah, I don't think it changes.
Cowboys receivers probably a different beast than trying just to cover Ridley and Pitts.
That is true.
Yeah, and I think Bucks secondary all of last year was susceptible, but they played pretty well when they needed to. So it was only the start of the season. We'll see how they go.
They did lose Sean Murphy's bunting, didn't he? He had a compound fracture of his humerus. Was quite nasty to see. But I agree with what you've said there, Sean. I think the Cowboys' offense is the real deal, and I've got a little side bet with Nate. I think the Cowboys win the NFC East, just quietly. But yeah, that Falcons defense is horrendous. I think the Bucks do this easily. One that may be a bit more interesting is the Titans at the Seahawks. The Titans were very disappointing last week against the Cards. They couldn't get the running game going with King Henry. Their defense was leaky. And the Seahawks had a really nice win against Indianapolis. Russ was cooking. Tyler Lockett went off. DK looked good. This game's in Seattle. I think the Titans start the season 0-2. I imagine the bookies have got the Seahawks as favourites. I think Seattle wins this one.
And I agree with you. Yeah, I think Seattle, they're a better team. Well, I think they're both pretty good teams, but Titans usually they always play better towards the end of the season. They start off a bit slow, whereas the Seahawks and Danger Russ, they usually start really hot. So, yeah, I'm going to go Seahawks here.
Yeah, I've gone Seahawks as well. Exactly the same sort of sentiment, as well as obviously at home with 12th man. You can't get past them. They are favourites at $1.33. The Titans are out at $3.35, and there is a line of 6.
Very short there, the Seahawks. Very short. I don't know about them at those odds, but yeah, they should be favourites in that game. We were talking just about the Cowboys. They faced the Los Angeles Chargers. They were valiant in that Thursday night football game on opening night. Amari Cooper, we had him on the Instagram, a little meme courtesy of my mate Ashley Watts. Shout out to you if you're listening. Obviously, Amari's been listening to the Esky and hearing me trash talk him, say he's not a top 10 receiver. He went out and had an absolute night. I think he had 13 for 130 odd and 2 touchdowns in that game there. The Chargers had a bit of a defensive battle against the Washington football team and came out with the win. This one, I think, will be close as well. A very interesting matchup. I'm putting my eggs in the Cowboys basket this year. I'm on them. I think, as I just said, I think they win the NFC East. I think their offense with Dak back fully functional with CD Lamb looking unreal and Amari Cooper obviously being a pretty good receiver. And they didn't even get the running game going last week. I've gone the Cowboys here.
Yeah, I've gone Cowboys as well. And you make an interesting point there. And I think actually a lot of games have shown that the running game has kind of changed. It's very pass oriented to start the year. With you now can go like 3 deep on your wide receivers. Like number 3 wide receivers are scoring bulk points for your fantasy teams. So I think it's kind of shown that, hey, that 3 wide receiver set and then the running back who can take a carry or potentially catch the ball is actually heavily favored now. And for every game I've watched so far, that's kind of teams that are winning. That's the mode they're kind of taking. And that fits very well for what the Cowboys want to do with 2 first-round picks at wide receiver and a second rounder as well. They've got a really good trio of wide receivers there. I think they score a lot of points, and I've picked Cowboys. I don't mind what the Chargers do, but I just don't think the Chargers are there yet. Team's still looking to add a few pieces to rebuild.
You did mention the trio there for the Cowboys. I think Michael Gallup has sustained an injury. I think he'll be out for a little bit. So it might be Cedric Wilson coming in to be the third man up there for the Cowboys. Look, we're going to see SoFi Stadium again, and with the Chargers playing, we might see it being a quarter filled. So that might be reminiscent of the COVID era. Monks, your tip and the odds, please.
Yep. So I have also gone the Cowboys. They're actually underdogs here. Total is 58. Charges are $1.51, and we've got a line of 3. What do you boys think of that?
Get on the Cowboys.
That's juicy for mine, but also the Cowboys. We talk about the Giants losing in a typical Giants way. The Cowboys love to disappoint as well. So we'll see. But with a healthy Dak and that offense, we spoke about the receivers, we spoke about Zeke. The thing we haven't even mentioned is the offensive line being one of the best in football. Against a pretty reasonable Chargers defense. It'll be an interesting battle, but I'm surprised that they are that long at $2.50 something. Maybe if you wanted to give them a head start, that might be a way to punt.
Yeah, it did actually remind me that Collins, their right tackle, did get suspended for a couple of games for performance-enhancing substance, I believe. So he's actually going to be out and off their line. Terrence Steele comes in as the replacement for them. But they still have an excellent offensive line. Like, I'm not too worried about it.
Yeah. Well, I think
they can score points. They can score 50 in this. I don't think Chargers D, though good and they got talent there, will be able to hold them to enough to keep the Chargers potentially in range of scoring points in this.
I just want to real quickly touch on Dallas's defense as well. Obviously, last year they're pretty susceptible to scoring. What do you reckon this season? Do you reckon they've turned the corner? I know Micah Parsons had 7 tackles, a couple of solos, pretty good outing for his first regular season game.
He will be a stud. DeMarcus Lawrence wasn't bad. I think
Lawrence broke his hand or his foot
as well. Yeah, Trayvon Diggs, I think he's coming along. He's a second rounder out of Alabama. He had a pick last week. I think they're a bit better than what they were last year, and they were horrendous. So not hard to be better than they were. Marks, have you got the overs? Are they under overs in this game? I imagine the Cowboys been able to score some points, and then the Chargers against that susceptible Dallas D. I'd be interested in that.
So just go back to Marcus Lawrence broke his foot in practice week, so he's out 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay, that's a big out. That is a big out.
To answer your question, James, I think they've got pieces, but they're just not there yet. And you saw that kind of against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Like they're better than they were last year, but they're not there in the top 10 of defenses.
They were going up against one of the most stacked offenses that's ever been assembled, and didn't get embarrassed at all. So I thought it was a pretty good defensive effort.
Yeah. That unders over is 54.
Oh, see, The bookies know. That is a high. That is a high total game points. So I don't know if I'd be touching that. I was keen for anything under 50, but yeah, that maybe be a little bit too much for my likings. Anyways, boys, let's move into Sunday night football. The game of the round. Can we
Yeah,
agree
definitely.
on the Chiefs at the Ravens? A big matchup here. That it was sort of we spoke ad nauseum before about the Ravens and the Raiders game. The Chiefs kind of did the opposite. They pulled one out of their ass. The Browns led for a lot of that game, and Mahomes was doing Mahomes things. Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce were looking very good. Water was wet. The Ravens, they would have looked at that round one game against Las Vegas and probably had in their minds that was going to be a W. It's a massive ask for them here on Sunday night football. I've gone the Chiefs. They had a great game last year. These two teams going at it. Yeah, Chiefs for mine.
I went the upset and I picked the Ravens. No real reason, but I just think this is going to be a high-scoring, close game of footy, I reckon. But I just wanted to see the Ravens win. Probably, divisional bias here from me. But yeah, I'll go.
Well, every team in the AFC West, every team in the West actually winning, yes, which is pretty crazy. 8 teams, with the NFL resembling the NBA of late, with the West being quite dominant. Monks, the Ravens would be outsiders here. You would have thought.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it would probably be off the back of the injuries to the running back core. I suppose they've probably got a couple of weeks to settle that one down and find some rhythm with that. So I've gone Chiefs as well. They are favourites $1.49. The Ravens are $2.64 at the moment. Still going to be a close one. The line is 3.5. Total match points, expecting a few touchdowns at 54.
Yeah.
Big total match points. That's interesting. That line only being 3 with the Chiefs at $1.40 something. So that might be something I might consider. Let's move through to Monday night football. The Packers take on the Lions. The Lions, we spoke about their unbelievable comeback against the 49ers. It just wasn't quite enough. And my Packers and my fantasy teams, because I invested heavily in them in both my fantasy leagues, double Aaron's. One word, disgusting. To be honest, Rodgers in the post game presser, he was saying, "Look, it's just one game." I think if you look back in the scores last year, I think the Saints destroyed the Buccaneers in a regular season game last year. So maybe take of it what you will. A lot of the blame getting put on Rodgers. He was putrid. He looked like a man that had not played a pre-season. I think I sent you boys a text this week saying that Marcus Mariota had more fantasy points than Aaron Rodgers did. That coming off one run.
Well, I think the joke was of Aaron Rodgers was the 35th quarterback QB scoring, considering there was 32 starters. It was 3 off that. 4, 3 of them. Yes, 3 of them.
Quick maths, yeah. And
yeah.
Aaron Jones did absolutely nothing as well. Look, we spoke about it before. Credit to the New Orleans Saints. Their defense was excellent, and they were able to run the football. When you win a game and you only throw 20 passes, as convincingly as they did, you're obviously doing the old school things right in football, in being able to run the ball and play good defense. Look, it's the Detroit Lions. They're at home. I think that they bounce back big time here. They were embarrassed last week, and I think the Packers come out and beat the Detroit Lions here. I don't know if I've got a little bit of personal bias there. I imagine the bookies tend to agree with me. But they'll want to make a statement. They were embarrassed last week, and that they'll want to put away their divisional rivals here in round 2 in prime time.
Yeah, I'll give you some confirmational bias. I've picked the Packers as well. What did the bookie say, Max?
Yeah, so I've probably put the curse on the Packers. I guess you can't put the curse on the Packers in this game. They are favourites at $1.14.
Curse on is to say you can't curse them.
Yeah, exactly.
That's it. Yeah, the favourites $1.14. Lions are out at $5.75. The line is 11. Yeah, and I do have to hate to twist a knife while it's stuck in you there, Peps, but Marcus Mariota also injured himself on that run, so you could say that an injured Marcus Mariota outscored Aaron Rodgers last week.
Too old for my fantasy teams. I'm hoping Rodgers has a big bounce back, and the Packers get a job done here. If they lose to the Detroit Lions, then I think we need a serious how they are as a football team. Let's hope it's a one-off abnormality.
And with that, that'll finish off NFL for this week. I'll give an update in the NRL. Manly have won 42-6. Well, I think there's about 30 seconds to go, I think, in that match.
Yeah.
But they've won quite handedly. Roosters, off they go. Good season all around.
You got to commend the Roosters and Trent Robinson and whoever's doing their dodgy books over there. No, but in all seriousness, a reserve grade side essentially for a lot of the year to go this deep is you got to commend that. Manly, it makes you wonder: are Melbourne that good, or did Manly just have an off week last week? They're through to a preliminary final. They won't get Melbourne. They'll get South, won't they? And then the winner of tomorrow night's game between Penrith and Parramatta will get Melbourne.
Yep.
But yeah, that'll wrap up our NFL chat and a little bit of NRL news there, leading us into the final round. Ding ding.
Yeah, and that'll kick us off with the UFC and boxing. And there was one boxing event over the weekend. Let's refer to it as the old timers boxing event, because they had Holyfield taking on Belfort and Anderson Silva taking on Tito Ortiz. I think all of them were over 40. Belfort the longest of the lot, and I think he's still over 40, 44. Yep.
Like 40s.
Belfort won with a TKO in the first round, and Anderson Silva won with a knockout of Tito Ortiz, also in the first round. What did you boys make of this? Of this event as a whole, and maybe should they have even authorized or not legalized, but allowed this event to go ahead? I think it was Vegas, the Vegas Athletic Committee.
Yeah, I was saying to you guys pre-show, it's pretty close to abuse, I think, with Evander Holyfield. He's in great shape for his age, but the bloke's 58. Like that's our old, that's our parents' age essentially, and it makes you question where boxing is as a sport. I think I made the allusion to you guys. It's kind of getting a little bit of the WWE feel about it, where it's more about entertainment. It's more about just trying to get big names and making some money rather than the actual sport itself. I didn't watch a whole lot of this. I caught the highlights, but. Yeah, and the other thing I suppose is former UFC stars in Vitor and Anderson Silva going across and making bank in these boxing exhibition games, matches, I should say. It speaks volumes as to the fighter pay in the UFC as compared to boxing. But yeah, no, you don't want to watch this. I don't want to watch a 58-year-old get knocked out. It's kind of sad in a way, I think. What did you make, Sean?
Yeah. So if you back to me, like, especially with Belford, potentially on all the sauce going into this as well. Like he looked pre-Asada, Belford being back there. Anderson Silva, I thought looked better, but Tito just looked so slow, and Anderson was just still had that electric pace with his hands and put Tito away like it was nothing. Both of us called out Jake Paul. That everyone just wants to get that name and that media circus on there.
Money.
And of course that leads to money. I think it's interesting as well. You kind of bring up the UFC comparison. I'd say that with these boxing events, they're putting them on quite regularly as well. Whereas the big kind of boxing events, you think of the heavyweights, they've kind of been put on hold since the Tyson Fury taking on Wilder, and then Anthony Joshua getting his belt back from Andy Ruiz. Like they've, nothing. Well, of course, COVID. They want to do it at massive stadiums with full crowd, so they've sat on it for a year. Whereas these guys are going, fuck it, we'll just show all this shit on the internet, sell packages and make money. Like who cares? And it's
working because we're talking about it. And I was saying to you guys pre-show, could you name 10 boxers currently off the top of your head? Like I think. After you go through your heavyweights and your Tyson Fury and your Anthony Joshua and your Deontay Wilder, and then you get Canelo, Ruiz you mentioned before, you start getting pretty thin. Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather up over the hill. Whereas if we wanted to start talking about UFC fighters, we'd talk about 100 right now. So I don't know. Is it a statement as to where boxing's going as a sport? Is it heading towards that exhibition money grab kind of setup? You know what the saddest thing for me was in this one was Holyfield. I remember watching him, as a youngster going up against Tyson and being a world beater, being a killer. It was kind of like, when you go to the zoo and you see a tiger or a lion, that's just in a cage and, maybe it's a bit older and it's a bit washed up or whatever. That's kind of how it felt for me. It was kind of a bit sad. And look, the bloke probably made a bunch of money. Hats off to him. But a far cry from the former heavyweight champion of the world. Yeah,
well, there's no doubt Holyfield in his prime kills Belford within a minute. Like,
of course.
There's absolutely no doubt of that. But yeah, 58-year-old Holyfield is a completely different beast, and a bit sad. But the other old boys, Mike Tyson, etc., going back out there and looking the old uncles fighting at the cookout. It's, as Snoop Dogg likes to say.
The difference being Tyson looked okay. Like Tyson looked good in that exhibition a few months ago, whereas Holyfield it didn't look like he could defend himself really. But yeah, again, look, you go out there and you're 58 years old and he's in impeccable shape, and you take a few shots and make a few $1 million. Maybe we're the idiots.
Yeah. Well, if we switch across to the other combat sport, we've got Anthony Smith taking on Ryan Spain this weekend in the light heavyweight division. That's really the only big fight on that fight night card. Anthony Smith, he's gatekeeper at this point, is kind of where he's sitting, whereas Ryan's coming through as the up-and-comer. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes. Anthony Smith really needs a bounce back in this one, but I'm unsure of how he's going to do that. Spain's been really good. Not with a couple good finishes to get him into this space. But the big one, of course, is UFC 266, and we'll preview that more next week when we do the next week's body. We've got, of course, our boy Volk on that, taking on Ortega. And I think the strawweight women's title is also on the line for that too. So that's looking like an excellent card. Actually...
a bit of time between cards as well, which gets you that little bit extra horny for it, and obviously Volk testing positive for COVID. This fight was meant to happen a while back, so a lot of interest, especially from Australian fight fans in this one.
Yeah, you did actually remind me that Jake Paul did offer Amanda Nunes like big money to fight Amanda Serra, who's like a double or triple weight division boxing champion. So that would be quite interesting. But again, we'll have to wait and see what happens there. And we'll preview UFC 266, which is a completely stacked card, but we'll do that next week. And Monks, what's the final note you've put there for us?
So sort of came out today. So I think some of the details are still coming out. But Tim Tszyu, who was trying to shape up a fight against Tony Harrison sometime later this year, on his way to that mandatory title bout next year. So Tony Harrison pulled out of contract talks at the last minute. So Tszyu has managed to lock in a fight against Tiaki Inush. Hang on, I've got his name. Inu here. So he's ranked number one in. Yeah, he's ranked number one in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to fight 17th of November. So Tim Zoo's sort of putting his title hopes on the line here. Yeah, so that's going to be happening quite soon.
Yeah, big for Australian
So, yes.
boxing. It'll be interesting to see
Yeah,
how Zoo does that one.
A big few months for Australian fight fans in general, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
No, definitely, yeah.
I'll let you boys get stuck into the F1. I've got to duck quickly off for a wee. We'll be back in a minute.
All good, all good. Scheduled wee breaks there for Peps. We've got to talk about one. It was the second sprint race of the year. Bottas was the real winner in that, but also the McLarens did really well to move into position. Unfortunately, when it came into the race, Bottas changed out his power unit, so he had to start last, which then promoted Max Verstappen and Danny Rick, our boy, onto pole position. But what a race for Danny Rick, Danny Ricciardo in this. He got Max Verstappen at the first corner, and then
huge start,
huge start, really good get go. Kind of caught Max napping in that regards, and then led basically the entire race from start to finish. He was threatened by Max continuously. They managed the pit stops well enough, and then Lando and him, drove the rest of the race out in front with no real challenges from the others behind them. Bottas did, after starting last, did finish third in this race for an excellent job. He looked like he had the fastest car by far out there, an absolute rocket ship in the overtakes there at Monza. But in the end, Danny Rick, he won. He got the fastest lap. First 1-2 for McLaren in 8 years or something. First win for Danny Rick since 2018, I believe, and we got to see the shoey on last. Yeah, and the scenes on the podium were absolutely crazy with Danny Rick doing shoey, making Lando do a shoey, the team principals up there doing shoeys and getting absolutely drenched in champagne, and then Bottas did a good job hiding out in the back there. He didn't get forced to drink a shoey from Danny's very, very dirty feet. What did you think of the race overall, Monks? And then I think we'll probably talk about Max and Lewis.
Yeah, we'll actually start with the sprint. I might get your opinion on this as well. So, leading into sprint, I'm talking about Pierre Gasly here. So he qualified sixth for the sprint race.
And then crashed.
During the race, he crashed out, which subsequently left him out of the main race, which means no points scored for him. There was a little bit going around in social media, a little bit heat on the sprint race, saying that it caused a little bit, either A, it's causing a little bit too much of an unnecessary risk for drivers who, if they crash out, means they can't race in the main race, and B, because of that, it sort of just becomes a little bit of a procession where you don't have any overtaking the sprint race. Whatever happens in qualifying to sprint is just going to be the result of the sprint race anyway. I don't mind it. I like it. I think next year with the regulations, if there's more opportunities to overtake, I think it would make more sense. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. There's always going to be the risk with the race and having a sprint race that there is you lose someone. Like it was Gasly this time. If it had been Max Verstappen or Lewis Hamilton, I think there'd be even more drawback on social media about, hey, the sprint race. Potentially they could do it earlier so that the cars could be fixed instead of trying to fix them overnight to get them ready for the race the next day. But then you're increasing your race weekend, or do you switch it, do the sprint race early, and then that gives you your top 10 for qualifiers, and then that's rejigged, whatever. I don't know. But I think you hit the nail on the head there with the closeness and the new regulations coming in next year. If you watch some of FP2 now, or you watch some of racing from yesteryear, I was just watching the Schumacher documentary film that just released on Netflix, which is quite good. It takes a bit to get going, but once you get into it, like it's an excellent kind of take on his career up to the point where he has his very devastating accident. In that, but also covers like his battle with Senna as the GOAT at the time of sport, and he's the young tiger coming through. Very much reminded me of Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen currently, but it's definitely a really good one to get the history, especially for us. That transition into Michael Schumacher. Michael Schumacher as the dominant F1 driver was our childhoods in motorsports racing. and what we kind of remember, especially his dominance of 5 championships at Ferrari. Like, it's crazy. He won 2 in 95 and 6, I think, or 94 and 5 from memory. Then 6, 7, 8, 9. He switched to Ferrari and they didn't win anything. And then he goes on to win another 5 championships to get his 7. Like, it's he could have stayed at the team he was at and they potentially could have won a couple more and then switched to another high performing team. But he chose the challenge of going to Ferrari and rebuilding the program to get him up to that point and then absolutely dominate.
Yeah.
And they hadn't won a championship since 71, I think it was. So it was like, it was really crazy, 30 years between drinks for them, and all on the back of Michael Schumacher. So great film. I highly recommend you guys go watch it.
Is that on Netflix?
Yes, it is on Netflix.
Yeah, Netflix.
And it's a movie. It's not a docu-series.
No,
it is a documentary. It's just one.
One.
Yeah, it's a movie, but it's documentary. You get.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that was really good. I also just want to, I don't know how much you can talk to this, but just bring it back to supercars as well. I'm not as versed as you are, but they obviously have sprint races as well.
Yes.
And that obviously works for the supercars. Comparison between supercars and F1, I guess, in that regard.
Well, you're talking open wheel race cars versus an open cockpits versus enclosed chassis cars. That can bump a lot more. I think it's a big difference. And they're probably not to the pinnacle or high level stress of technology of motor racing as well. So you can bin a car on the wall and they'll rebuild that car overnight and it'll be good to go next day. Like you can confidently be able to do that just knowing of how they're built and how they're put together. That is doable. F1 car, it's a lot harder to do. There's a lot of carbon pieces. There's a lot of high stress and smaller margins of error within that. That's why they spend hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars to build these cars. They
just look fucking totaled when an F1 car has a crash and you look at the aftermath, you just go, Jesus, how is that going to get rebuilt? Whereas the closed cockpit car, like you see, in the Australian, in the supercars, they have a big crash, and you kind of go, oh yeah, well, there's some panel beating that needs doing, but that doesn't look as bad to my untrained eye, at least.
Yeah,
that's it.
It is different, but I guess my point being, if the regulations change it, you might not need the sprint race, because the idea is we want more racing, we want more competitive racing, and you saw it in this race, especially at Monza, that there was second gaps between everyone. And they they didn't form a complete train, but there was train elements to it where they were just following each other. Whereas, as my comparison, you look at FP2 or you look at the races from previous years, you'll have a car wheel like behind, the rear, the front spoiler is basically touching the rear wheels, and they're following each other like that through corners constantly because they just don't have that super bad downforce requirement, which they've got now. So, some of those regulations to limit the error and then also clean the airflow off the cars potentially could mean that cars are on each other's tails for a lot longer. You get a lot more close wheel-to-wheel action. It'd be interesting to see how that happens because in all those other ones, they also don't have KERS or DRS to enable them to help do takeovers. So with those two things, new regulations, it could be Overtake City next year. We have to wait and see. How that goes. So let's finish up with this race. What do you think of Max versus Lewis? Who did you have at fault for this crash? I think everyone's seen the crash during the week. With them crashing into each other on the forced corner over the chicane there. What were your thoughts on this?
That's it. Yeah. Well, it's been a bit of an F1 week for me. So obviously we had the Schumacher documentary on Netflix. I watched that. I also went back and watched the F1 movie Rush.
Good movie.
So good movie. Obviously we've so Schumacher.
What's the one with Stallone in it? Well, you keep talking. I'll see if I can find that one.
Yeah. So Schumacher documentary, obviously, with aspects of Senna. And to quote Senna from 30 years ago, being a racing driver means you are racing with other people. And if you are no longer go for a gap that exists, you are no longer a racing driver because we are competing. And put quite simply, I think that's what Max Verstappen did. He obviously saw a gap there on the weekend in that 1-2 corner, the little chicane there. At the end of the day, he probably is at fault. He could have pulled out of that corner at the last second. Lewis did take his line and ran pretty wide through the first corner, which then set them up for that second corner where they crashed. I think that's racing. Like, you got to be competitive. I think that's what we want to see. We talked the last couple of weeks about how dangerous the sport is and how, like, it's rare to have a season where someone doesn't die or have a crazy accident. And not that you want
It's rare.
to see
Death is now more rare, but crazy accidents is still definitely happening.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And we talk about the halo in this one, like the Max's rear wheel basically sitting on top of
100%.
Lewis's helmet, like his head without that halo. That's, potentially doing serious damage to his neck and helmet, his head area.
Do you think that was life and death there, Sean? Like, again, I'm not no F1 expert, but I feel like without that halo, then Lewis could be in real trouble.
Yeah, well, it depends on how much weight's sitting on that car. The cars, I think, weigh between 600 and 700 kilos. Per wheel, that you divide that forward depending on the angle, force, blah blah, physics. But potentially, there could be 100, 200 kilos coming down on Lewis, which is still a heavy amount of mass. I know Lewis definitely does his gym work, but he's not there doing bloody neck rolls with 200 kilos. I can give you that much.
He doesn't have NFL linebacker neck. Let's put it that way.
No, exactly. So, it's one of the things. Maybe some of the stuff, like even if it was an older car, some of the other things might have helped lay it off. But with these cars now and how big that tire is too, there's a lot of surface area and potential for this kind of stuff to happen. The sausage dog curbs, which are big curbs that kind of force the bouncing up, they might even revisit what they kind of look like because cause something like this. But I think Monk's hit the nail on the head. You want close racing in this, and that was kind of my sentiment. Max did get a 3-place grid penalty for the next race, so they kind of found him at fault. But I think you answered it. It's like Hamilton could have given him potentially more room there. Max could have potentially eased off and given him the corner and tried to get him on the next corner. But they're 5 points, 7 points difference between the two of them in the championship. They're the out and out favourites. They're trying to win the championship, and occasionally they're going to crash into each other because they're fighting so hard for that position. And this was just the circumstances like, what was it? Red Bull had a shit pit stop. Hamilton and Mercedes had a slower pit stop, and that put them right next to each other. Hamilton rejoins for them. They're fighting for that first corner, knowing very much that whoever gets probably this corner or the next one is going to be out there then challenging the McLarens for the win of this race. So you can see that how cutthroat it is in the sport, and that's what you want. You want close racing, and like I said, occasionally this shit's going to happen. They'll step over each other. That movie,
5 points difference between Verstappen and Hamilton.
Yeah. And that race I was thinking of was Driven with Slicer.
But I just want to reiterate, like, glad to see Lewis got out of that crash relatively unscathed, a little bit of sore neck. Hate to see the championship runners bow out of the race like that, but again, it's good racing. I think it's part of the sport.
If you're a McLaren and Danny Rick fan, or Lando Norris fan, you didn't mind too much. Big points, trying to cement their third position in the championship. I don't think either one of those will compete for the driving champions by the end of the year, but it's still a long season. Anything can happen, and this can potentially be the start. And I think it's pretty cool, especially after watching the Schumacher story, some of that stuff with McLaren, because Ayrton Senna was at McLaren. He did win in Adelaide at 93. Danny Rick was at that race. So his winning trophy for this he put next to Senna's trophy in the McLaren headquarters. But then also you got to think McLaren, Lewis raced for McLaren through Schumacher's heyday. They had Mika Häkkinen in there as also winning championships. Like McLaren's one of the biggest teams that's been around for years in history, sport. So for them to finally get a 1-2 after being down in the dumps for so long after Mercedes kind of separated and took their engines and their program and split out, and McLaren had to kind of restart their program. It's been pretty impressive.
Interesting you mentioned Danny Rick being in that race. He must have been about bloody 3 years old. I don't know if we'd have any memories of it.
Yeah, he's same age as us. I think he would have probably been 4 when he was there.
89, yeah. Same age as you, old farts. I'm a spring chicken here, 99 vintage here. So yeah, 89, 93. Yeah, he might have been 4.
Yeah.
Actually, back on Danny Rick and that salary talk we were talking about before, I forgot to mention, before he moved to McLaren, his old deal at Renault had him at 41.5 mil a year.
Yeah.
So he took a huge pay decrease to get to McLaren. But if he was at Renault, he'd probably be the highest earning Aussie sportsman.
Cheated him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think he was third or fourth highest paid driver last season as well, being at Renault too. Like he's behind the Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen as well. Final note, and it's talking about next season. Stroll and Vettel have confirmed they are staying at Aston Martin next year.
Yeah, no real surprises there, I don't think.
Yeah, but retaining those guys.
Yeah, well, Stroll's dad owns the team. Vettel probably, I mean, he's not going to another team. He's not going back to like this, say, Red Bull, Ferrari, that sort of stuff. There's no other spots for him. You wouldn't see a up and coming driver take his spot.
Great. Can I interrupt you, Monks? It's a great point you make, because in FP2, the current leader for FP2 is an Australian. And he's potentially struggling to find a position next year. Because I think the guy running second as well has significant financial backing. So he potentially could get an F1 seat, but it's filling up very quickly, which is unfortunate. So the young Australian, unfortunately.
The bloke's name?
I'm just seeing if I can find it very quickly.
So I think Guan Yu Zhou, the Chinese racer, is also trying to vie for a seat in F1.
Oh, man.
Bugs, that might be one for you to look at. Has there ever been a Chinese F1 driver?
Great question.
Not off the top of my head, I don't think so.
Casual fan here. I can't think of one.
Can I find Australian? Oscar. I don't have no idea how to say his last name though. He'd be 20 currently.
Big O.
Yeah, Big O. He is racing through the Alpine Academy, and they've already confirmed Ocon and Alonso for next year. Because he potentially could replace Alonso. And I think they're thinking is they wanted him to be a year away, but he's been so good in FP2, he's kind of forcing his way in. And I think in the last many, many years, the winner of Formula 2 has come straight in, winner of that championship's come straight into F1 the following year. Mick Schumacher, I think, was last year's winner, and he's come through. And then you've got Williams, Lando, and Albon, who were probably 2 years before that even. But it's interesting. As you mentioned, Vettel, of course, big hero, Michael Schumacher, and then Mick Schumacher, that history there, and the kind of relationship they have, and then Mick has with his father now, and their passion of motorsport, and the tragic accident and not being able to live through that. It's it's quite interesting.
Yeah, that's it.
Oscar Piastri is that fella?
Thank you.
Yeah. Guan Yu Zhou is coming second, and he seems to be linked with Alpha. Looks like Giovinazzi might be on the out.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see what happens next season.
That's F1 news. Don't think they've got a break now. There's no race this weekend. The next race.
Yeah, Russia's coming up in 2 weeks, is it?
Yes. 26th? No, that'll be next weekend.
24th, 26th, yeah, next weekend. Break this weekend, and then,
All right. Tennis. Pepe, your best mate.
Didn't
win
my
the US
favourite
Open.
athlete in the world. Well, obviously, we're talking about Novak Djokovic here. Outstanding bloke. He had an opportunity to do something that hadn't happened since Rod Laver, wasn't it? That we were looking at in winning all 4 Grand Slams in 1 year. And he didn't bottle it. He got beaten by the better bloke on the day, which was Daniil Medvedev. Shout out to the young Russian winning his first Grand Slam. And Novak, unfortunately, I think this is the 3rd time that he's won 3 in a year without being able to win 4. No love lost for me. Not a big Novak Djokovic fan in terms of his off-court antics. Can't argue with him on the court. His record speaks for himself. But the big thing here was him, Roger, and Nadal are all tied on 20 Grand Slam wins. So he could have gone outright first in most Grand Slams ever won. You'd imagine he still gets that title. It just it wasn't to be on the weekend.
It was a good change of fortunes as well, because I had thought about this. Medvedev did lose to Djokovic in the Australian Open final. So
he did.
So
He's
this one.
Yep. And look, for me, I'm not a massive tennis fan. I get around the majors. I love the Australian Open. It's around Australia Day. It's the time of the year where most people are off work. It's hot as fuck. You want to, just sit back with a beer and watch the tennis. But for mine, probably getting over seeing the same guys every single time going out and winning it. And it's completely different in the girls, which we'll get to in a sec. But outside of guys called Djokovic, Nadal, and Federer, not too many guys win Grand Slams, in the last sort of 20 years. So good to see Daniil Medvedev get the win there against the Joker. Sean, what do you reckon? Do we go out and see the Joker next year go out and cement himself as the best male tennis player of all time?
Maybe. I just did a quick Google with quick math in my head with the 4 Grand Slams a year, and with the 60 between those 3, they would have won 15 years worth of Grand Slams between the 3.
It's ridiculous. So it's hard to think of a sport where you've seen just a few blokes dominate for 2 decades.
Yeah.
It's not really comparable. It's I don't know. And again, individual sport, hard to compare with team sports. But essentially anyone that's followed tennis, male tennis, over the last 20 years, you're pretty used to seeing one of those 3 guys win. So for mine, as a bit more of a casual, don't mind seeing Medvedev win that one. Tell you what, his hairline is struggling. I don't know if you guys have seen poor Danny's hair. That one might be a bit of an Andre Agassi kind of look in the next few years, if there's one thing of note there. The girls, if you don't mind, boys, we'll jump over to that. That was really interesting, in that we had 2 unseeded girls playing for a Grand Slam final. That being 18-year-old Emma Raducanu up against 19-year-old Leylah Fernandez, and 18-year-old Emma gets a Grand Slam win, her first ever, and really unprecedented here for the British tennis player. She's the champion of the English press at the moment, and Leylah Fernandez, keep an eye out for her, the Canadian. She'll be around, and I reckon a bit of a passing of the guard, perhaps. Obviously, we've got our girl Ash Barty, the number 1 ranked female tennis player in the world at the moment. But Serena's probably done, and then some of the older girls, that we've seen dominate chicks tennis over the last sort of 10 years in your Sharapovas and a few of the Eastern European girls passing over the guard, I think, to the younger girls.
Yeah, agree. I think Monks has just added in there as well that Dylan Alcott did complete the Golden Slam. He won all 4 golds, all 4 Grand Slams, and then also won a gold in the Paralympics in the
Plus the
last
gold.
two.
Yeah.
Absolute dominant year from him as well.
I think he might have done a shoey as well.
I think he drank out of the cup. I think he was watching one of the other ones, and he pulled a sneaky beer out of his pocket, poured it into the cup, and drank it, and then tipped it on his head.
Yeah, these Aussies that win, Bam Bam Tuivasa comes to mind. Mark Webber, a big proponent of the shoey. Look,
that's it.
We punch above our weight in the sporting arena, and definitely in the drinking beers out of weird places arena too.
That's it. I should actually also mention that Didi de Groot, also wheelchair tennis player, got her Golden Slam as well.
Oh,
yeah. So
very
well done, Mats.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's wrap it up, boys.
Yeah, let's finish with the round ball soccer, the round ball football.
The world game.
The world game. We'll start off in the EPL, of course, and we've got to talk about Ronaldo's debut. Re-debut?
Return. Return to United.
Yeah, return back. Scores 2 goals.
Unbelievable. Brace, he scores the first, and then Newcastle hit one back, and then he got the next, and then they ended up running out 4-1 winners in this. Probably the most eyes on this game in a long time.
What I found impressive was, Ronaldo's first goal was more hustle, was all effort, like just being there around the goal, just tap it in there. But his second one was vintage him, perfect run, gets the through ball and just puts it away. There was no doubt he was scoring that goal. Like, you can see the energy and the hype is all back around the club. And you and Macca were talking about it a week or so ago about hey, they could go all the way, and I think they've now got that. That superstar that raises all boats, and they're now just firing all cylinders. It'd be interesting to see how far they go.
Look, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket and say one guy, especially at the age of 36 or 37.
When that one guy's a goat. So.
Yeah, well, that's true. And we saw what Tom Brady did with the Buccaneers, obviously different sports. But I think there's a lot of hope amongst United fans that this, could be the spark of something very special. Obviously, a historically very strong club, but haven't done too much in recent memory, going far in any of the major competitions. We'll jump across to the other major competition quickly. They did get beat by Young Boys in Switzerland in the Champions League, but. Not to worry. The first game, hopefully they can still get out of the group there. So they go to the top of the table in the EPL. There's 4 teams there on 10 points. Very early days. Don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. But before the season started and before Ronaldo signed with United, all the chat was around Man City. I think they were paying about $2 on Sportsbet to take out the whole thing. So maybe United give them a bit of grief, and I think Chelsea with Lukaku back there, and you can't rule out Liverpool. I think we see an interesting EPL this year.
I definitely think we're worried that City were going to run away with it and be red hot favourites and just be champions. But it's there. It looks like they've got a few contenders, which is good. Is exactly what we want to see.
And it was really nice. We talk about Brentford. Back in round 1, getting that win and just seeing a really nice win from a cellar dweller club, a small club like Arsenal, just getting a win and getting off the bottom of the table. That'd be a really big lift for their fans. A tiny club. No one expects them to do much. So seeing them get off the bottom of the table and a win against Norwich would have been nice for their 8 supporters.
So Man City's still favourites at $2.10. Man United is at $7.50 at the moment.
Load up, boys. Load up, boys. Manchester's red. Manchester's red. The goat's back.
At $7.50.
Where's Macca when you need him? He'd be.
Well, speaking of them, they do play the Hammers West Ham on Sunday night, 11 p.m. our time. So it's a good time to watch the Ronaldo play some soccer. In other matches, Spurs did embarrass Crystal Palace 3-0, and
No, other way. Palace embarrassed Spurs.
Right. Embarrassed Spurs, and they of course are now looking to bounce back against Chelsea coming up.
Yeah, so North London Derby coming up. Tottenham obviously flew out of the gates, winning their first 3 games, and then a really shock loss there. I think there might have been a red card involved in that one. But yeah, the EPL is looking good this year, boys. I'm not. Look, maybe I've got my red glasses on, but I'm not sold on Man City being that short. I really hope, for the sake of the league, that it's a bit closer than being a $2 favourite.
Yeah, definitely. Finished up with some Champions League. Pepe, who have we covered the young boys, of course, beating.
Yeah, the young boys. The weird named Swiss team. They're definitely no Sheriff out of Moldova. Let's put it that way. Got to keep an eye on Bayern, boys. They went over to Barca and won 3-0 away. They're always good. So have to watch out for them. Obviously, Barca. No Messi now. Possibly not the same side as what they used to be. Juventus were very impressive with a 3-0 win up in Sweden against Malmo. And City, a 6-3 goal fest against Leipzig. Liverpool had a win over AC Milan. And shout out to Laurie Daly. He hosts, obviously us as rugby league fans, Canberra Raiders legend, hosts the Big Sports Breakfast up there in Sydney, early morning radio. Listen to him, trying to cover soccer. And if you think we do it bad, Laurie can take it one further. He refers to it as Ajax, as in, Ajax spray and wipe. It protects and disinfects. So the team I'm talking about, of course, is Ajax. They went out and smashed Lisbon 5-1. So Champions League football's back. The EPL's well underway. And yeah, like I said, Ronaldo back at United. It gets anyone that's a Red Devils fan a little bit horny for the season.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, even EPL and soccer fans hey, that's one of the 2 biggest names in soccer. From a GOAT status. And hey, he's back. He's in there, and you can watch him every week playing in the EPL. You'd love to see that. Strange
times. We talk about the Bucks and Tom Brady being there. It was very unusual, to see him last year going out in that jersey, and now we've got Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo going out in jerseys that we haven't seen ever in Leo's case, and for over 10 years in Ronaldo's case. So a bit of a changing of the guard. A few goats wearing different colours this year.
Yep. And with that, boys, I think that's on the Esky for this week. Thank you all if you've listened all the way to the end. As always, if you like this content, please consider subscribing. Drop us a like and comments. We do like to jump in and respond to most of those and answer some of the comments, especially the ones that are funny and that make fun of monks.
Always.
Or me, or Sean, or whoever. It's probably one of our favourite topics, actually.
Yeah, definitely. The comments during the week give a lot of humour for us. We try to come up with witty comebacks for most of the week and fall flat. Anyway, thanks, boys. We'll talk to you soon. As always, we'll be back next week covering all the sports on The Esky. Thank you all. Good night.
See you, boys. Enjoy the weekend. Massive weekend of sport, and AFL Grand Final upcoming. Can't wait.